Is it time?
It is time for us to do what we have been doing, and that time is every day.
We'll know in a very short period of time, but it looks like it could be something that will be not good. Believe me, not good.
I see issue with that. And again, hey.
You're not going to be able to insult your way to the presidency. That's not going to happen.
I don't know who created Pokemon Go, but I'm trying to figure out how we get them to have Pokemon go to the polls.
I'm Ted Cruz, and my pronoun is kiss my ass.
So when you think about it, there is great significance to the passage of time in terms of what we need to do to lay these wires, what we need to do to create these jobs.
America is a nation that can be defined in a single word. I was going to put
Not good. Believe me, not good.
What's up, everybody? Pleasant good evening. Welcome, dissidents one and all, to the Do Dissidents podcast. Keaton Weiss here, of course, with Russell Dobular.
Hola, amigos y amigas.
It is cold in here. It's cold outside. It is cold inside where I'm at. This is my first winter coming up in this new apartment, and this office has tile floors and big windows. So it's cold in here. You know, it's hard to heat this room without overheating the rest of the apartment. So I have to bundle up. And, you know, fucking Tim Pool, because this would be a perfect night to put a nice beanie on the top of my head and do the show nice and cozy with a nice cozy beanie, nice tight on my head, trap that heat in. I'd be so much more comfortable with a beanie on, but that fucking bastard, like now every podcaster and YouTuber who wears the beanie just looks like a knockoff Tim Pool. You look ridiculous. You look like you're imitating someone else, especially since I have the beard and mustache too.
I was gonna say, man, with you, it would really look like your Halloween costume.
Exactly. That's exactly what I was gonna say. Next year, maybe I should just be Tim Pool for Halloween, so at least I get to wear it once, because it would really come in handy tonight. It's cold, freezing in here. I have a green tea with lemon, I have a fleece. It's like I'm outside.
All right, but with that shirt, you could probably make the Elmer Fudd hat work for you.
That's true, actually. You're right. With this shirt, I could do the Fudd hat. Yeah.
Why don't you go for something else? There are a lot of varieties. As somebody who drove a horse and carriage for a living in both Chicago and New York, I can tell you there are a lot of options for warm headgear that are not the beanie.
The beanie. Yeah, that's true. That's true. I have that gray baseball cap, that kind of neutral colored hat. I just don't know where it is because I never wear it in the summertime, so it's always a chore to find it this time of year. But you look comfortable. You're in your T-shirt, your little Hawaiian style. It's not a Hawaiian shirt, but this is a shirt you got in India.
I got this in Goa. Yeah, because I have that New York radiator heat, man. I have my fucking window open right next to me over here.
I know. Well, we could see the radiator right in back of you. So Russell is nice and toasty, and I am huddled around a fire here in my
that's actually I've got the valve mostly cut off, and that's how much heat is still coming in.
Yeah. Oh yeah. No, the heat in New York is always pretty reliable from my experience.
You know, if you don't have a slumlord.
Mm-hmm.
If you have a slumlord, they'll fuck you. You'll freeze your ass off.
Exactly. So, folks,
you ever bleed a radiator?
No.
Yeah, you got to take like a lighter and try to get the steam to come up. With
my grandparents, I'm sure, did.
Suck it up
in the Bronx, their place.
Yeah. That's sad when you're doing that.
Yeah, indeed. Folks, we got a nice crowd in here to start things off. 344 strong in the YouTube chat, 131 filing in over on Rumble. Wherever you are, please hit that like button and hit that subscribe button. Jake, our producer, is in the house tonight fielding Rumble rants and member chats. So if you got Rumble rants over there and you want them up on the screen and read and responded to, if you got them, send them our way. We already got some super chats in here, which we will read in a couple minutes. But we have a lot to get to tonight, a real lot to get to tonight. And so a quick announcement before we start. Tomorrow,
$2 cover charge only, folks.
Well, speaking of cover charge, tomorrow, Thursday, November 9th, we are doing our first Patreon and paid Substack subscriber and locals exclusive live stream tomorrow night. That will be Thursday night at 8 p.m. And so if you are a fan of ours, you see a lot of us over these next couple of days. We got the show tonight, we got a patron stream tomorrow, and then we got the show again, our morning dew show, Friday, 9 a.m. Doozy of a patron show coming up tomorrow. We're going to compare Zionist.
All right, get ready. I've been instructed not to even attempt to describe part of this show. I'm very curious to see how Keaton is going to manage it.
Well,
I'm just sitting back now.
We're going to be describing Zionist satire versus anti-Zionist satire. We have side-by-side. State of Israel put out what they thought was a really, really funny dig against woke college students protesting against their genocide, and they thought that was just hilarious. So we're going to put that side by side against some actually very, very good satire against the Israeli genocide, and so that's something we have. We have some RFK stuff. We have some more State Department developments, and then obviously there's been a lot of censorship in the big tech world around the Steven Crowder release of a certain document by a certain perpetrator of a certain event in Nashville. And so that is what we're going to be talking about. We're going to be talking about the censorship surrounding that story. Glenn Greenwald is doing a whole thing on that tonight over on Rumble. And so we will be talking about that tomorrow. That is a Rumble exclusive live stream. That's going to be a doozy. Those are a lot of fun. If you would like to sign up.
I could have done that. I could have done that.
Yeah, but you wouldn't. Yeah, well, you could have, but I told you I'll handle it. So, sign up at patreon.com/DoDissidents or DoDissidents.substack.com. If you're over on Rumbles, now join our locals. You can join our locals for $5 a month. Same perks. That'll be a really fun show tomorrow night. Patrons and paid Substack subscribers get 2 Patreon exclusive streams per month, as well as some other perks, which we'll go over later because we're going to pitch this again to you guys a little bit later on in the show. But fun show tomorrow, and then obviously a show again Friday. So we got lots of talking to do over these next couple days. Let's get started. We got a couple of quick news items to deal with because I don't know if you guys noticed last night, but there was an election happened yesterday. Yesterday was Election Day, November 7th. There wasn't enough going on for us to warrant an actual live stream counting votes.
Is there a Republican debate tonight?
There is, yeah. That's the other thing. There's a Republican debate tonight.
I just found that out, and because it was obliquely mentioned in an article I was reading on a completely different topic.
Yeah, there is a Republican debate tonight. There was speculation that this could be a rowdy one because this is now one of their last chances to really make a name for themselves. I mean, Iowa caucuses are 9 weeks away. We're getting pretty close. Russell's got to get his winter gear ready to be treading through the frozen tundra of the January heartland, which he will be going and doing some on-the-ground coverage there. Then I'll be in New Hampshire.
Yeah, I don't have the hardcore shit I used to when I drove a carriage.
Yeah, you'll need it out there. It is no joke cold out there in mid-January. But yeah, there is a Republican debate tonight. We're not going to be covering that. Obviously, if something interesting happens, maybe we'll talk about some of that tomorrow on the Patron show, if not Friday morning. But last night was election night, and it was a big night for abortion rights. They are on an undefeated run, man. Dobbs is the case that the Republican Party cannot crack. A pro-abortion rights amendment in Ohio passed easily. Virginia had a vote up and down the state legislature and state senate. Democrats held both chambers against the wishes, obviously, of Governor Glenn Youngkin, Republican. And then, arguably most significantly for the Democrats, at least, incumbent Democrat governor in Kentucky, Andy Beshear, won re-election against Daniel Cameron, Republican challenger, 52.5 to 47.5. At the time this screenshot was taken, this is when the race was called by the Associated Press. The story in this race was the story of the midterms. If we look at the map of Kentucky,
racism.
You're right, exactly. If you look at the map of Kentucky, you have Lexington and Louisville. Those are deep blue. Those are the only two places in the state that are really supposed to go blue. But as you can see, just as we saw in the midterms, Republicans struggling mightily to run up margins in the rural areas. So as you can see below, obviously, the brighter the color, the larger the margin for each party. The deep blue is strong Democrat. The deep red is strong Republican. So if you look, only a small handful of rural counties went over 70% to the GOP. As you could see, Democrats were able to eke out narrow victories in some of these rural areas here, but most of the rural areas went Republican, but only slightly so, that very light pink. If we compare this to the 2020 Kentucky map, Trump versus Biden, that's what it looked like just 3 years ago. A deep sea of 70% plus Republican counties. Now, granted, this was
even
Trump versus Biden.
Louisville and Lexington aren't as blue.
No, they weren't as deep blue either. Now, granted, that's with Trump at the top of the ticket as opposed to a Republican challenger. Andy Beshear is, political royalty in the state of Kentucky, son of very popular two-term governor Steve Beshear, who served pretty recently from 2007 to 2015. So it's not as if this was just a generic Democrat versus a generic Republican. Beshear is one of these Appalachian blue dog Democrats who's pretty centrist, who's fairly popular in the state, but still, that does not account for this difference. Look at this. Look at 2020, a sea of overwhelming Republican counties versus this, not even close. Not even close. This is the Dobbs decision at work right here. Republicans still winning most rural areas, but not by nearly the margins they used to. Not anywhere close, and that is killing them. It killed them last night in Kentucky. It hurt them in Ohio. It hurt them in Virginia. I noticed this trend immediately during our election night live stream last year for the midterms. We saw the Ohio results coming in. J.D. Vance ended up winning that Senate race, but I could see right away light pink margins for Vance in the rural areas. Same thing here.
Yeah, and his slogan really brought it home. Red state condoms break too.
Yeah, right. Exactly. Yeah,
that was his campaign slogan.
They should run with that everywhere. That's probably the best slogan they can come up with, honestly. If you're a Democrat, you really can't do better than that.
It's working.
Well, there's nothing else they got to run on. You may as well.
Well, that's it. And this just shows that this is really Republican bad karma going back to Reagan, come back to bite them in the ass. I mean, it's just they played footsie with the Christian right for over 40 years, ever since Reagan. People forget this now. The Republican Party did not get into all this culture war shit. The Republican Party was more defined until Reagan by its Rockefeller Republicans than by the Christian right. I mean, the kind of country club Republicans who would have found the Pentecostal born-again kind of religion is very uncouth. They wouldn't have wanted anything to do with those people. Reagan saw the political potential, and he gave them his famous line, "I know you can't endorse me, but I endorse you."
Right.
And that was it. He made a so to speak devil's bargain with the Christian right, and the bill came due now. Finally, they kept pushing it, and up through the first Bush, they just pretended to be for pro-life policies, right? They got their votes, but they didn't actually do anything to try to enact it. It was with Bush the second that they really actually started to push this legislation, and that was partly because the Christian right said, we're not going to keep voting for you with no results. You're actually going to have to start delivering on these policies. You can't just keep saying that you're for it. You got to actually prove that. And now here we are. They're the dog that caught the car. Now okay. Now you've done it. Nobody wants that. Nobody wants that. Nobody wants to be stuck with the girl they banged in the Dairy Queen parking lot. I'm sorry. Right. Or nor her with him, right? Like nobody wants a lifelong bond. I mean, some people do. But people don't want, even if they do feel that way, that they would never have an abortion. A lot of people who feel that way still don't want the state to tell other people what they should do in that situation. It's such a loser for them. You can see it has killed them in 3 elections now?
Oh,
2?
yeah. No, it's been absolutely horrific for them in these statewide races. Now, going into 2024, Donald Trump leading in all of these swing state polls. You have people saying their vote for president is going to be based on economic issues versus social issues 2-1, which speaks, Russell, to your theory, which you posited, that they'll give the Republicans the executive, but they'll keep the legislature in Democratic hands, which could mean Democrats keep the Senate. They probably won't flip the House next time, but they will likely keep the Senate, because if you look, it's the statewide races where these issues are just destroying them. The governor's races and the Senate races, that's where it's wreaking havoc.
I got to dig into this more because the article I read about it was very slanted. It had an agenda. But apparently they did pretty well with school boards, too, where a lot of the culture war stuff is being battled out, including in Loudoun County, which basically elected Youngkin by flipping, and it's widely perceived on a lot of policies, or we don't know what word to use anymore. We don't want to insult the black activists who coined it, but woke, for lack of a better word. A lot of those policies, there was an enormous backlash, largely, as Tlaib masterfully reported in a 3-part series, from South Asians who had moved to Loudoun County for the quality of the schools, because they have this famously top-notch public school system. But according to what I was reading, not this time. They were saying that the Democrats just swept all the school board seats. Again, I need to dig into it more because the article I read had a clear bias in favor of results like that and emphasizing results like that. So it could be more mixed than that article would indicate. But at the very least, they specifically said Loudoun County, the school board, the Democrats swept.
Well, it was a pretty good night for Democrats last night. Obviously, they won the Kentucky governor's race. They won the Virginia state Senate and state legislature. Ohio codified reproductive rights into their state constitution. So pretty good day, pretty happy day for Democrats overall last night, but not for this Democrat. So here's a Democrat in Arlington, Virginia, who saw a Republican, I guess, handing out some literature near a polling place. And this guy was not happy. This guy was not feeling the good vibes throughout the Democratic Party world yesterday. This is a confrontation that went somewhat viral. Here is what we can assume fairly safely is a Democratic voter coming up.
I don't think he's an RFK guy.
No, not an RFK guy, not a Youngkin guy. These are the D.C. suburbs. This is Arlington, Virginia, so this is a pretty strong Democrat area. But here he is confronting, I guess, a Republican who was handing out literature near the polling place. Now, I just want to say, if this guy was doing this within 100 feet of the polling place, that would be against the law. But that's not what this guy brings up. And given how calm the guy holding the camera is, I'm pretty sure this guy is a pro who knows better than to stand within 100 feet of the polling place. It doesn't look like there's a polling place that close by. So I just want to put that little caveat in there. Not that it means much, because that's not his beef, obviously. We'll see what his beef is. But you're not allowed to campaign within 100 feet of a polling place unless you're Bill Clinton on Super Tuesday in 2016, where he hung out at the polling place shaking hands and yucking it up with people. But because he wasn't wearing a Hillary button, they said this is okay to do. But this guy's not
you're
Bill
not
Clinton.
wearing flair. But if you're Bill Clinton, your face is fucking flair when the person running is Hillary fucking Clinton.
Exactly.
No, I've told that story before. That was when, at the time I was married, we went to Massachusetts and campaigned together on Super Tuesday. And that was a big red pill moment for me when I saw that the Democrats, and I still actually believed that the Democrats were a legitimate political party concerned with fairness and what was right. I actually still believed that. So when the Democrat in charge came up with that excuse to get out of pursuing prosecution, I said to my wife, they're not going to let Bernie win. There's no way. I saw right there that my whole theory of what the party was false.
Yeah, because they were just going to keep when you talked about this in the past, you said they're just going to keep making excuses like that until the clock runs out, which was correct. Right. But this is not Bill Clinton. This is just a guy who's handing out some sample ballots near the polling place. And so we'll take a look at this.
When you fucking people tried to overthrow the election, you might as well have been walking up to my head on the way to the polling station, putting a gun to my head, trying to tell me not to vote.
Oh my God!
You expect me not to take that fucking personally? You fucking try to overthrow elections with violence, and then you're out here among decent people.
I'm assuming that's a January 6th.
Thanks for coming out. What do you have to say that, huh? What's on your policy prescriptions?
Have a nice day. You've already
fucking rapist rights involving yourself in people's fucking families and their fucking bedrooms.
It's pretty wild.
You fucking animal.
Holy shit. Okay, now let's see.
You try to steal my vote next year, I'm gonna fucking remember you personally.
Thank you.
Now he stays and he's gonna take a picture of the guy, and now another guy comes by, and we'll see what the person holding the camera is up to.
To be clear, what he's giving out are ballot suggestions. They're Republican
ballot suggestions, right? Not sample ballots. I'm sorry.
Yeah, which is very, very common electioneering tactic. Like,
right.
There's nothing out of line about
Hey,
that.
line B. Hey, we got Jake Schmendrick on the line B for county clerk, whatever. Yeah.
Yeah. If you support rape in January 6th.
Support rapist rights and January 6th. Vote line B.
I mean, I understand that was right there at the top, so you can't really blame the guy.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly. All right, here we go.
Is that all right?
Yeah, you
Permission?
can. Yeah. It's a one-party consent state.
Shitbird? Yeah, one-party state. You want a fucking one-party country is what you want.
Hey, sir,
he wants a one-party country. Sounds like you were the one who wants a one-party country.
Right, exactly.
The guy's just handing out some literature, and you come and you threaten to hunt them down. If you try to steal my vote, I'm going to find you.
Yeah, this guy's personally rigging ballot boxes.
Right, exactly. And this guy's like, you want a one-party country.
You got this fucking schlepper on a corner over here. He's personally going to steal your vote.
Oh, my God.
Sure, thank you.
You know, try not to be buddy-buddy with these people because they put on the face of a good neighbor, but they support lynchment, so they're fucking taking or they're fucking Bible-beating bigots and freaks.
They're Bible-beating bigots and freaks.
They're not good neighbors.
Wow.
Like this whole language of Americana, of like they're living in this Norman Rockwell painting, and this guy is not a good neighbor. He's impurifying the body. He's impurifying their natural bodily fluids with his presence.
Yeah, it's amazing. Amazing. I mean, that guy couldn't take yes for an answer. His side did very well yesterday. That was Virginia. They won. They swept. But, man, that guy was fucking pissed off anyway. Some people can't take yes for an answer, you know. Can't make everybody happy.
That's basically like the Matrix, where they put the cable in the back of your head to upload. That's what that guy does with CNN.
Yeah, right, exactly.
The guy's literally just mainlining CNN into his cerebral cortex. It's just... He has no thoughts of his own. His idea of what reality is has been so distorted by the media, and it's just absolute black and white wrestling presentation of politics. I mean, that's what that does to you.
Absolutely. Patrick Donahue, thank you for the €5. Solidarity, brothers. Solidarity to you, Patrick. Thank you.
Solidarity, man.
Very much. Solidarity, indeed. Up the Reds gave us a super chat. I'm going to read your super chat in a minute, Up the Reds, but I flagged another chat because this is about as high a compliment as you can pay to somebody. Russell has the ability to make me care about things I don't care about. Well, that's good. That's high praise. It doesn't get better compliment than that.
Thank you. What things are those? Exactly? I'm curious.
Yeah, who knows? But this is interesting. Your super chat, thank you for the $10. Celtic FC in Scotland banned their own supporter group, Green Brigade, for supporting Palestine. They lost 6-0 to Atletico Madrid yesterday. Karma. Wow, I didn't know that. That would be a great story for Friday, because we like to do some Euro stories for Friday. And actually, that might be a good one.
Oh,
It's a good
come on,
idea.
man. I want to do the sheep. Well, that's another
Well, we'll do
Scotland
the sheep,
story,
too. Yeah,
actually.
that's
It'll
fine.
be
We can
two
do the
Scotland
sheep.
stories. Focus on Scotland.
Scotland's.
We'll play.
Yes.
We'll play a little clip of Jimmy Doohan's terrible accent, or so I'm told. I'm told his accent was like a crime against Scots.
Yeah, so make sure you tune in if you're a Scottish dissident. Special focus on Scotland on Friday morning. China Shell, thanks for the $2. Use this.
The
to buy
ship
your
is gonna fly apart.
Thank you, China Shell. Thank you, Abiding,
Thank
for the
you.
99 cents. And thank you, BB Baby. Keaton and Russell are the real MVPs. Well, thank you very much, BB Baby.
you.
I don't think we've seen you here before, but welcome. If you're here, folks, for the first, second, or third time and you have not subscribed, please hit that subscribe button here on YouTube. Please hit that follow button over there on Rumble. And let's get a nice big crowd in here this evening. This is another piece of news that just came across the wire literally minutes before we went on the air, and we thought we should do this one since everybody's already talking about this on Twitter now, and I'm sure this, will be big overnight. Here's Anna Kasparian disavowing the Democrats again. Now, she already did promise not to vote for the Democrats after the overturning of Roe v. Wade. They're useless. I'm done.
And then she walked that back. She
walked that back. So we're just doing this to put her on the record, especially because here's Anna saying she will not vote for Joe Biden, calling him, quote, an absolute disgrace. So let's take a look at this.
The George W. Bush administration condemned the Israeli government for doing an airstrike in Gaza that took out one Hamas militant but killed 14 other civilians. Think about how disgusting and devolved our country has gotten, where Joe Biden can't outdo the war criminal George W. Bush, where George W. Bush has more morality than Joe Biden. Joe Biden is a disgrace. An absolute disgrace. I will not be voting for Joe Biden under any circumstance. I don't care about any other policy that he has championed. I cannot, as an Armenian American, support a president who has greenlit the ethnic cleansing and genocide of Palestinians in the Gaza Strip. This, for me, is the red line.
I thought you was going to say, I cannot, as an Armenian American, work for an organization called the Young Turks.
Young Turks.
It's just funny when she plays that card, given that the name of the channel is the Young Turks. But point taken there. I was at first a little suspicious of this video since it does have some edit points in there, but it is a clean take where she says, I will not vote for Joe Biden. And she's clearly talking about the genocide. So I'm assuming the edits are for time purposes. So that's why I figured we should go ahead and play this. But yeah, making that point, I don't even remember that, but I take her at her word that the Bush administration condemned the Israeli government for doing far less than they're doing now. That's an interesting piece of modern history that I honestly did not know of. But that's an interesting point of comparison that she draws there. And Russell, you've been saying you have a theory that she's trying to break away from the channel and that maybe this is part of that. But look, now she is once again on the record saying, for real this time, done with the Democrats. Let's see if she sticks to it.
Yeah, it's very hard to read what's going on here. It seems like she genuinely has maybe always had a certain, streak that doesn't quite conform to a lot of the conventional left lane that the Young Turks inserted itself into post Bernie campaign, Russiagate, all of that. Which, Russiagate itself, I think she very enthusiastically supported. But it seems like she has some conservative leanings, some conservative views. I hesitate to use that word because I agree with a lot of the stances she took on some of the trans issues that they got pilloried by their own audience for. And Cenk was on board with her on that stuff too.
Well, yeah, you could say unorthodox in progressive circles.
That's a good way to put it. It does seem like she means this stuff. It's hard for me to believe it's purely a grift, that she purely is just making up that she feels this way about these things. It seems like she actually does. At the same time, watching her and Cenk, just to psychoanalyze a little, that looks to me like an abusive kind of a relationship that she's growing increasingly tired of. So at the same time,
I'm running for president. Interview me.
Right. At the same and even before that, like more and more, like I don't watch them a lot, but when we've watched them to cover them, just the body language between them has seemed weird to me for a while. Like she, like a hostage situation. She's looking for the exit. So I do think that perhaps, yes, she always had certain inclinations in this direction. I think she might be letting them out now in preparation to find a lane for herself so that she can get away from that psychopath.
What I want you to explain is the logic behind what you're doing.
Yes.
Yeah. I think Cenk is probably an abusive, manipulative, narcissistic boss that she's been at the mercy of for 15 years now. I think she's ready to move on, and she's trying to figure out a way to do it where she's not going to have to work at Arby's.
Yeah, I mean, I couldn't speculate that far as to what kind of boss he is, but it's clear, like just the fact that you would put a co-host through the task of having to humor you, to interview you for your fake illegitimate presidential campaign and have her go through with that. I mean, Jesus Christ. God damn. But
I think she's had enough of him. I think she wants to be taken seriously, and she's never going to get that as long as she's stuck with that guy over there.
Now, this Palestine issue is something where you're not going to find any safe refuge in the Daily Wire circles or the Patrick Bet-David circles or things like that. So,
sure.
I mean, you're really carving out a new space for yourself, potentially.
Sure, but it is a lane. I mean, if anything, it would be closer to kind of the lane that we're in, frankly. I mean, not exactly, but it would be kind of in that universe, which would be complicated for her because most people in that universe hate her.
Yeah, don't really like her, right?
For the Russiagate years. So it would be hard for her to pull that audience, given that she has almost universal enmity in those circles.
Yeah, it will be a tough transition for sure. All right, let's move on, folks, here. Here is Rashida Tlaib on the House floor. So obviously the House of Representatives voted to censure her for what were perceived as, bigoted, anti-Jewish comments that she made and statements that she endorsed. They ended up censuring her. They ended up passing that resolution to censure her with 234 votes, including 22 Democrats, which we'll take a look at in a moment. But before the vote happened, here is Rashida making her case on the floor of the House.
I can't believe I have to say this, but Palestinian people are not disposable. We are human beings, just like anyone else. My city, my grandmother, like all Palestinians, just wants to live her life with freedom and human dignity we all deserve. Speaking up to save lives, Mr. Chair, no matter faith, no matter ethnicity, should not be controversial in this chamber. The cries of the Palestinian and Israeli children sound no different to me. Why? What I don't understand is why the cries of Palestinians sound different to you all. We cannot lose our shared humanity, Mr. Chair. I hear the voices of advocates in Israel, in Palestine, across America, and around the world for peace. I am inspired by the courageous survivors in Israel who have lost loved ones, yet are calling for a ceasefire and the end to violence. I am grateful to the people in the streets for the peace movement, with countless Jewish Americans across the country standing up and lovingly saying, "Not in our name." We will continue to call for a ceasefire, Mr. Chair, for the immediate delivery of critical humanitarian aid to Gaza, for the release of all hostages and those arbitrarily detained, and for every American to come home. We will continue to work for a real lasting peace that upholds human rights and dignity of all people.
I just want to pause it for a second there, because every person I've heard who is calling for a ceasefire is also calling for the release of hostages. That's what Norm Finkelstein said when he was on our show. He says, yes, a ceasefire means, a sort of status quo peace deal, which of course would involve the release of hostages, because holding people hostage is violent in and of itself. So this is something that a lot of mainstream media people use to sort of strawman the pro-ceasefire side. Well, how can you have a ceasefire and not demand the release of hostages? No. Everybody who's saying ceasefire, obviously the release of hostages is part of that. And so she made that as clear as she could possibly make it right there. But she has some more. We'll let the rest of this play out.
And centers in peaceful coexistence between Israelis and Palestinians, and censures no one, and ensures that no person, no child has to suffer or live in fear of violence. 71% of Michigan Democrats support a ceasefire. So you can try to censure me, but you can't silence their voices. I urge my colleagues to join with the majority of Americans and support a ceasefire now to save as many lives as possible. President Biden must listen to and represent all of us, not just some of us. I urge the president to have the courage to call for a ceasefire and the end of killings. Thank you, and I yield.
Well, the question remains, what are you going to do when he doesn't? That's something that I would like to have her on record answering. But despite that speech, the House did vote to censure Representative Rashida Tlaib amid bipartisan backlash over Israel comments. Bipartisan. So the way the math worked out is interesting here. The House voted to censure Democratic Representative Rashida Talib, the only Palestinian American in Congress, after her defense of a rallying cry that is widely regarded as calling for the elimination of Israel. The censure resolution introduced by Georgia Representative Rich McCormick condemns the Michigan Democrat for promoting false narratives around the October 7th terrorist attack by Hamas on Israel and, quote, calling for the destruction of the state of Israel. He's referring to the from the river to the sea comments. The House passed the measure late Tuesday by a vote of 234 to 188, with 22 Democrats joining all but 4 Republicans voting in favor of her censure. 4 members voted present. Tlaib has been one of the most vocal members of Congress to demand a ceasefire in the Israel-Hamas war amid a humanitarian crisis in Gaza. I love how they call it a humanitarian crisis in Gaza, as if it's like this naturally occurring thing, right? And the rising death toll.
They had a hurricane.
Yes, exactly, of Palestinian civilians. Here are the 22 Democrats who voted to censure. A lot of names we've never heard of there. Jared Golden, notable centrist Democrat. Dan Goldman in good old New York. Josh Gottheimer from New Jersey.
Levi's heir, Dan Goldman.
The Levi's
Man
heir
of the
boy.
people.
Yeah.
Man of the people, Dan Goldman.
Exactly. Josh Gottheimer, big AIPAC guy in northern New Jersey near New York City. Pat Ryan, who was my congressman until I moved further up north. And, of course, friend of the show, Richie Torres, unsurprisingly, and Schultz,
notorious blocker of random people.
Yes, notorious blocker of random critics. So, yeah, look, I mean, it's obviously disgraceful that this passed. It's disgraceful that 22 Democrats signed on to this. It's hard to get enthusiastic and defend the squad since they've basically hung us out to dry on so many different times. But just on principle, I mean, this is obviously horrible. And it's obviously just shows you what you're up against, is what I said at the very beginning of this. You really feel like you are fighting such an uphill battle, at least inside the halls of Congress. As Rashida said in her speech there, the people are on her side. 71% of Michigan Democrats want a ceasefire. In her district, it's got to be almost unanimous support for a ceasefire. I can't imagine more than 10% don't want a ceasefire in her district. So, this idea when she says, you can censure me, but you can't silence the people who back me, that's the kind of statement you could have made time and again for every battle that you guys in the squad promised to fight and stood down. Like, the whole point of sending you there was that we would have your back if you repped us, right? And so, it's good that she said it in this case, but, unfortunately, it's too late to really get too invested in her defense unless she does what I suggested she do on the last show, which is exit, run as an independent. She'd win. She would win. She won't do it, but she would win if she did.
That was exactly what I was thinking watching this, because you have Cori Bush there, you have Ilhan, you even had Jayapal tearing up there listening. So what this tells you is, in spite of what we've heard about, what we've suggested, that maybe once you get into Congress, they take certain family members hostage, they can stand up when they want to. Standing up against the war machine is probably the least popular thing you could do to the Democratic and Republican, the uniparty establishment in Washington. That is probably the most threatening stand you can take, an anti-war stand. That's probably the thing they like the least. They would probably rather see the entire country get gold-plated health care than to see people take a stand against the war machine. So you can. So clearly you can. Clearly they don't have your nephew in a basement somewhere. So clearly you have some freedom of action to actually cross these people. Because I think we've all speculated, what the hell do they say to these people when they get to Congress that turns them into this? So this is basically telling us you're just going along to get along. It's you're thinking about your future career. You can't take the pressure of getting the stink eye every time you go to work every day. You just don't have the stones for it. Whatever the case may be. Okay, so here's something you really care about. You really seem to care about. And look, you are able to stand up for it. They all are. They're all standing up for it. So why didn't you do that for our health care? Why didn't you do that for our wages? Why didn't you? I don't want to kick her when she's doing the right thing. But it does, given the history, beg the question, as you point out, well, so why didn't you do this before? You're able to figure out that when you throw out that kind of math, there's not much they can do to you. So why couldn't you figure that out with force the vote?
Right. Exactly.
Only when it affects your grandmother. And I'm not minimizing that it affects your grandmother, but all of these issues affect a lot of people's grandmothers. Does it not affect your grandmother? Because now you're in Congress and you're hooked up. Your grandmother, the grandmothers of the squad generally don't have to worry about money and health care now because you got where you got. What is it? Why is it not as urgent for you? Because you do, and I've said on the show, and I stand by this, the social democrat left definitely has had a blind spot about foreign policy that we partly carried over from Bernie's blind spot on foreign policy and lack of foreign policy vision. And I think we all need to correct that, and I've been trying to correct that in myself. And certainly on the show, we've been focusing almost exclusively since this war broke out on foreign policy. But that doesn't mean it's not a fucking tragedy for people to lose their houses, lose their life savings because they got sick. That doesn't mean it's not a tragedy for people to have to work 3 jobs to support their families and have no time to spend with their kids. You're worried about a generation of kids who are socially misaligned. Well, then you probably don't want the parents not in the home to raise their kids. And in order to allow them to spend that time with their kids, you got to give them a decent wage. So it's not to say because we need to focus more on foreign policy, we can walk and chew gum at the same time. I'm not saying we need to dispose of those things. So why can't you work up that kind of emotion for people who lost their parent to cancer for no good reason? because you could not stand up to force the vote on health care. So, yeah, I mean, that's why we're not being like, okay, let's let bygones be bygones. We're going to get behind them, because we can't.
No, if she
You'd have
quits
to go
the
a lot
party, I'll
further
back
than
her as
this.
an independent. If she quits the party, I'll back her as an independent, just to back her as an independent. But that's it. I
Agreed.
mean, other than that, look, I mean, I'm sorry. Like, obviously, she means what she's saying here. She's spoken about her grandmother. I believe her grandmother's in the West Bank. I don't think her grandmother is in Gaza. But she's talked about going through the checkpoints, and she's not married anymore, but her husband at the time got taken out of the bus, and they shake him down with a gun pointed. I mean, it's just absolutely horrible. So I believe everything she says. I'm not saying she's faking her way through that. But at the same time, yeah, where was that passion for the working people who put you there?
Right.
Russell. Beautiful. 691 in the YouTube chat, 241 over on Rumble. Let's hit that like button, folks. Let's get a nice big crowd in here. Franklin Warsham, thank you for the $4.99. Appreciate it, my friend. Poor people don't vote in off-cycle elections. Poor people are Trump's base. Is this Dobbs or just a bunch of wine moms with nothing better to do? No, that's Dobbs. Listen, rural Kentucky are not, well-off lib types. No, those are rural voters. And Democratic voters still skew poorer than GOP voters. The Democratic base has gotten more upper class because they've gotten more PMC, but still on average, poorer people do tend to vote Democrat still, on average. Those dynamics are changing, right? There's a lot of tectonic shifts underneath those coalitions, but still macro level. Yeah. No, you look at a map of rural Kentucky, that's Appalachia, man. Those aren't shit libs out there. Those aren't wine moms out there. These are ordinary people like in Kansas who probably hate the fucking Democrats, but this issue makes it very simple for people. It's very easy for people who don't pay attention to politics very much. They're like, well, I mean, if I get knocked up, I don't want to be forced to carry the baby. So if the Democrats are going to let me off the hook for it, I'll vote for them. Like, it makes it so easy for people. Or even if they hate the Democrats, if they're not particularly involved or invested in what's going on, this just makes the choice very simple for so many voters who tend to be lower information. And I don't mean that as an insult. By low information voter, I mean average person, ordinary person, right? It's something very digestible for ordinary people. And that's why this has proven an absolute killer for Republicans in these statewide races. Obviously, Trump is still going to win Kentucky by a landslide next year, right? I'm not saying it's going to sink.
But that doesn't mean they won't vote Democrat for other offices.
Exactly. That's what I mean. Where it has really proved to hurt them terribly is in the statewide races. Senate, governor's races. It has killed them everywhere. They didn't win a single governor's house. I think they picked up one governor's house, actually. But in 2022. But that's it. One governor's seat. Senate, they struck out. They struck out across the board, and they had a pretty good map.
Yeah, this issue has destroyed them. I mean, I have no doubt, given the feelings around Joe Biden and the character of his administration, without that ruling, we'd be living in a world with a red Senate and a red House with a
no question about that
margin. No, this has absolutely destroyed them. Considering, I'm probably going to New Orleans for the winter and the spring. I'm curious because Louisiana has one of the most draconian laws. It had one of those trigger laws that went immediately into effect as soon as the ruling came in. So you've got this blue bohemian majority black city sitting in this blood red state. I mean, I was there for a week last year, and there was a protest going down Bourbon Street for abortion rights. So I'm very curious, like, are they going to have a referendum there? Like, what's going to happen? Because it seems like a lot of these red states are dealing with it that way. They don't really want to give the state to Democrats, so they're just trying to nail down their abortion rights so that the Republicans can't mess with it, and then they'll still vote for Republicans.
Yeah, I mean, we'll see. That'll be an interesting thing to observe, I guess, while you're down
I mean,
there.
that's part of the case for being there in an election year, because we're up here. Like, that's a whole other perspective in terms of the issues at play in this year's election.
Right. For sure. Cool Blue, thanks for the 1999, my friend. If Democrats hold the presidency with election 2024, even with inflation, the Dobbs decision and abortion can get female voters 52 to 54% of the vote to carry overwhelmingly Democrat. Republicans last won women in 1988. If the Democrats hold the presidency, even with inflation, yeah. I mean, I don't think they will, just because it seems like they're trying to account for that in the polls now, where they're asking, what are you most likely to vote on? So the presidency, I think, is still likely to go red, especially these last round of polls.
I'd be very surprised.
But, this is why, and I think Russ is on to something here when he is sort of predicting a split call, right? Folks, once again, now that we've got a crowd in here, we'll plug this again. You can go to patreon.com/do-dissidents and support our program. Patreon supporters get their name up in lights here on the credits of our live streams. They also get call-in access to our post-show Q&As, which are every Sunday night. That is every Sunday after the show. We do Rumble exclusive Q&A shows. I think we can announce we have Jimmy Dore on Sunday, right? I think that's pretty much set. I think so. It is 99% nailed down. We'll nail it down 100%, but I think Jimmy's going to be joining us on Sunday. And we hope you guys enjoyed our appearance on the Jimmy Dore Show on Monday. That clip just dropped on YouTube today. We did an old dissident classic on the Jimmy Show, our famous cowbell left routine. We brought that over to the Jimmy Dore Show. Went Hollywood with that one, but that was a lot of fun. So
well, I mean, that's why you want to put these ideas into development until they become a project.
Right, yeah, exactly.
I could have used a little more cowbell.
Right, exactly. We've been workshopping that one for a while, so we finally brought it to Broadway, as they say. You also get access to our patron and paid Substack subscriber exclusive live streams. Our first one of November is going to be tomorrow. Great show planned. Patrons, paid Substack subscribers, and paid Locals members will have access to that live stream tomorrow night at 8 p.m. So go to dodissidents.substack.com, dodissidents.locals.com. It's all the same perks, so wherever you prefer to sign up, it's really up to you. If you're on Rumble right now, that Locals button is right under the screen. So sign up and join us tomorrow. We know a lot of you guys tend to super chat us a few times per show. Especially the guys who have points that they really want to get across to us. If you're super chatting like the one guy, McDougal, with the MAGA, the MAGA ambassador to this podcast. Hey, man, McDougal, if you're watching, I don't know if you're watching now or if you catch it on the replay, you tend to hit us up with $10-15 worth of super chats per show. Hit us up with $5 to $10 of super chats per show. Throw $5 in the patron pool and then call us on Sunday or call us during the show tomorrow and make your case to us then. Doesn't cost you anything extra if you do it that way. But you really do help support the show by becoming a member. So we do 2 exclusive live streams per month, as well as your name up in lights and access to those Q&As. So you get to call into 6 shows a month between the Q&As and the exclusive streams, plus a couple of those other perks that I mentioned. Patreon.com/do-dissidents.
We're getting a lot of comments in the chat on the Jimmy Dore appearance. I got to say, so Zoom has totally different lighting than StreamYard. So I went back, I looked at that video when it dropped today. I look like Brando in Apocalypse Now.
I looked a little purple.
I'm like half in the dark. I'm like, the horror. So I'm actually doing something a little different with the light today.
Oh, were people commenting on the light?
I'm giving myself. No, nobody did, but I know. Didn't you see that? I'm like half in the dark.
I noticed I looked a little purple. That's what I noticed.
Yeah, no, so now I put some front light up. Since I've been back, I haven't been doing any front light.
There you go. All right. Why don't we move on along here? Okay, so this is a video of a nurse for Doctors Without Borders, which is just, you talk about an organization where these people sign up and the guts it takes to do what these people do is unbelievable. Here's an American nurse who's back from Gaza talking about her experience treating patients in an evacuation zone at a hospital that she expected to be hit with an airstrike. Here she is talking to Anderson Cooper. He asks her, would you go back to that hospital? Would you go back to Gaza to treat more people? Here's her answer.
Would you go back to Gaza?
In a heartbeat. In an absolute heartbeat. My heart is in Gaza. It will stay in Gaza. The Palestinian people that I worked with, both our national staff in the office as well as my staff at Indonesia Hospital, were some of the most incredible people I've ever met in my life. When everything went off and we got the notice to move south of Wadi Gaza, I was texting my nurses at Indonesia Hospital and I said, we lost a nurse weekend one. He was killed when the ambulance outside the hospital was blown up. And I was texting them when we got the evacuation orders and I said, did any of you move south? Did any of you get out? Like, are any of you coming down this way? And the only answer I got was, this is our community. This is our family. These are our friends. If they're going to kill us, we're going to die saving as many people as we can. And I said, if I can ever have an ounce of the heart that you have, I will die a happy person. Okay,
let me just pause it for a second. She says, if they're going to kill us, we will die together. She's talking in this interview. If you didn't know the context of this interview, if you just saw this interview not knowing what war she's talking about, not knowing anything about the circumstance, you would assume the they are going to kill us, are our adversary as the United States or CNN's adversary. You would assume she's talking about an evil, hostile power. Why should a nurse with Doctors Without Borders be worried about being killed by who? Them, they. But who are they in this case? No, they are our allies. We sent $14 billion to they so that they can terrorize people like this. Just when you think about how sick that is, how incredible that is, you know what I mean?
Well, yeah, and the fact that you've got, Anderson Cooper is not known for his moral stance. If you remember back when AOC stood for something, his interview with her was one of the most disgusting displays I've ever seen, because you're a fucking Vanderbilt, man. And AOC at that time is talking about healthcare and socialism, and he is talking like she's Pol Pot. I mean, he the horror on his face and the disgust. Hang on, so what exactly are you saying? And you've got him sitting there, giving her not only this platform, but giving her no pushback. That's part of what's been so remarkable, because figures like Anderson Cooper, I mean, they're masters of controlling the narrative and the framing and cutting people off when they go in the direction that doesn't accord with what their overlords want said. This thing, I've never seen anything like this. I've really never seen anything like this, where the media does. Usually, the media is not really responsive to public opinion, right? I mean, that's a big part of why they are held in such low regard at this point. Over on MSNBC, I guess we're going to cover that on a Friday, where Katie Tur was interviewing an Israeli official and giving him a lot of pushback about everything he was saying about what's going on there. I've never seen anything like this. I've never seen establishment goons like Anderson Cooper not just go along with what's coming out of a Democratic White House, ever.
Yeah, no, that's a good point. Let's let her go on.
I will die a happy person. They were incredible. I would like to send out a reminder that there are civilians seeking shelter there, and that my doctors and nurses didn't leave out of loyalty to their community. And I know that there is an idea being pushed right now that anyone that stayed behind is going to be considered some kind of a threat. And I want to remind people that the people that stayed behind are heroes. The people that stayed behind are they know they're going to die, and they're choosing to stay behind anyway.
You're talking about doctors, nurses in the hospital?
I wake up every morning and I send out a text message and I ask, are you alive? And every night before I go to sleep, I send another message and says, are you alive?
Well, Kelly, thank you so much for your time.
Thank you.
Yeah, nothing I can really say that wouldn't piss off my bosses too much, but wow.
Yeah.
Thank you very much for your time.
It just seems like this is just too fucking much. It's just too much for everybody, except Douglas Murray, apparently. This is something I might pitch for Friday. I haven't finished it yet, but there was a very interesting interview I caught half of before the show of Piers Morgan and Douglas Murray. And I think what a guy like Douglas Murray doesn't realize, not to get too off topic, is that he's undermining his own argument, because by taking the position he's taking, he is basically proving everyone who said that people who make the cases that he makes regarding modern academia are just Western chauvinists who hate brown people. You're proving them all right. You're proving them all right. You're proving that, yes, you're just a Western chauvinist who hates other cultures. Like, just absolute total. Douglas Murray in that interview is arguing that Hamas is staging the dead bodies, that these are people that they killed who were trying to get to the South. Based on what? Based on what exactly? You know, he's just making all of these insane claims. I mean, honestly, as somebody I considered perhaps, a William F. Buckley of his generation, it's very disappointing to see how just absolutely insane his and all of these people.
Oh, yeah.
There are quite a few people in that lane that I've always on the show said, yeah, I mean, I agree with a lot of this cultural critique. I don't agree with a lot of their solutions, and there are things I think they go too far on, but there's some overlap with what I like, Marr, for example. And they've all just been unmasked in this event, as in the end just being Western chauvinists. Like you really never believed live and let live. You never really meant it when you said, no, I respect these cultures, but at the same time, I think we've gone too far in arguing that our culture is uniquely bad. No, that's not what you meant. You actually meant that you think the West is superior and has the right, any country that you read as Western has the right to impress what you see ultimately as inferior cultures. You denied it before, but you can't deny it now.
Of course. No, it's absolutely in plain sight. And that's why we covered that Bill Maher monologue. That's what a lot of that was about, for sure. For sure. All right, we'll take a couple more super chats. I just got a message that the Patreon email never went out for this show, which is bizarre because I just checked it, and yeah, it's not posted there.
Fucking
for some
deep
reason.
state strikes again.
Yeah, I don't know what the hell that was
again.
about. I have no idea because I send them all out at the same time. It could have been a screw up on my part. I mean, there's no call-ins for tonight anyway, so it's not like you're missing the link. But I do like to send alerts to the Patreon members whenever there's a show anyway. So I apologize for anybody on the Patreon feed who didn't get one. I will look into that. But I just got a message about that, and I checked, and it's true. It's not on the scroll. So I do apologize about that, folks. I will look into it as soon as we're done. But you'll be sure to get one for Sunday. I'll make sure now, because now I know for Sunday to double check to make sure that that sends properly. Because on Sunday, you have the call-in link that we have to send out. And I have to make sure it sends out properly tomorrow because we're doing a Patreon show tomorrow. So we will get that taken care of. Don't worry. But thank you for whoever brought that to my attention. FR, who just sent me the message. I just got the alert. So thank you for alerting me to that. And we will fix that for tomorrow. Shino Billy, thank you for the $10. Appreciate it. Unsure why some leftists are giving credit to the squad for co-sponsoring the ceasefire House resolution. Feels very performative to me after they vote to fund Nazis. Just my gut reaction. Well, this is the difference. One of the big differences between Israel and Ukraine, and Russell's writing an article somewhat about this. Not entirely about this, but it does definitely touch on this. That, Ukraine just didn't hit people the same way, partly because it's white on white violence, so it doesn't check those identity boxes that a lot of the more progressive left likes to check now. But obviously, in Rashida Tlaib's case, this is obviously very personal for her. And so that's why she had that strong reaction.
That's it. And now that she's in Congress, healthcare is not.
Right.
Wages are not. She's set for life.
Right. The Church, thanks for the $4 super sticker. Appreciate that. Kuznetsky Basaint, thanks for the $1.99 super sticker. Appreciate that as well. Super chats and Rumble rants are all super helpful, folks. They are what help keep the show afloat. So thank you very much for your contributions. moving right along here, let's go to RFK. All right, so we had an interesting development in the RFK campaign as he seems to have flip-flopped both on his anti-war stances and pro-free speech positions, posture. I don't know, because it sounded to me like at the beginning of the campaign, even though he didn't put all that much meat on the bone, I mean, he was, anti-Ukraine war, but he was always pro-Israel, which means, I don't know, I never really bought him as an anti-war candidate, but at the beginning of the campaign, he at least pitched himself. That's what I was saying. It's a pitch. He pitched himself as being anti-war and pro-free speech. And now he seems to have flipped on both of those. Now he seems to be pro-war and anti-free speech. And so we saw this tweet come out yesterday. This is from Bill Ackman. Please see my below letter to the president of Harvard University sent today, which was dated November 4th, 2023. Robert F. Kennedy retweets this letter. We're going to find out what's in the letter in just a moment. But he says, bravo, Bill Ackman. It's time to hold college administrations responsible for the epidemic, of campus anti-Semitism by insisting on zero tolerance policies. So you can already tell what this letter is going to be. We're going to get into this in just a moment. Russell's going to read some excerpts of it that he wants to respond to. Before that, though, we should just, full disclosure, cite this. Investor Bill Ackman, David Sachs PAC donated to RFK Jr.'s presidential campaign. So this could have something to do with why Bill Ackman's getting that rim job from RFK here. But here is the letter, or pieces of the letter. This letter was 1,000 miles long, extremely long letter. But Russell's going to read some of the pieces of this letter that RFK endorsed. Do you want to just set it up briefly before you start reading pieces, however you want to handle it?
Marilyn was leaving my father's bedroom. I was 5 years old. I had never seen a woman naked before. we like to have fun with friend of show RFK.
Friend of show, Robert.
Friend of show. So I really wanted to take apart this letter because it is so illustrative of so many of the currents of this debate. For one thing, you're seeing the way that people like Ackman are going to use his money to try to crush these conversations and to try to crush speech, and how desperate they are. You also see how all the contradictions in the kind of identity politics that 10 minutes ago someone like Ackman had no trouble with. I never heard him say anything about this. I'm pretty aware of the people who have been speaking out on those campus issues and freedom of speech issues on campus. I've never heard Ackman say a word about it. His arguments are so contradictory and so all over the place. The ultimate effect of it is to attack wokeness for being suppressive of speech and being contradictory, and then to argue for the suppression of speech. It seems like he wants a wokeness that's more inclusive of Jews, I guess, and that suppresses speech that he doesn't like in particular. And platform speech that he does. It's, he just wants to work the refs. And he closes out with quite
that's a great way to put it. Yes.
Yeah. And he closes it out with quite a potent economic threat coming from somebody in his position.
Indeed. All right. So let's get into this right now.
When you explained in your October 12th video address, he's speaking, this letter was written to the president of Harvard. When you explained
President Gay.
President Gay. We thought it was a slur when we first read it.
We thought it was a joke or something. Thought it was pretty dear. Urso Gay. That's the president of
President Gaylord.
Yeah.
when you explained in your October 12th video address that Harvard embraces a commitment to free expression, you sent a clear message that the eliminationist and anti-Semitic statements of the protesters are permissible on campus. Now, this is the trick he keeps pulling. In order to get around his free speech arguments, he calls the arguments of pro-Palestine inherently eliminationist. So that keeps coming up in this. putting aside the legal limitations on free speech that include restrictions on fighting words and true threats, quote, where speakers direct a threat to a person or group of persons with the intent of placing the victim in fear of bodily harm or death, which honestly, even if you did view that in the abstract as eliminationist from the river to the sea, it would not fit that definition, which I'm sure Ackman very well understands.
Yeah, well, you know, from the river to the sea, I just thought of it. Kind of sounds familiar to from California to the New York Island, right? You know?
Sure. Yeah.
You know, I mean,
well, you could make this argument that any party in a war or any party that aspires to take back land is eliminationist.
Right.
Right. The Basques are eliminationist by this standard. If Harvard indeed had a strong track record of protecting free speech, many would have taken your support for free speech more seriously. Just 2 weeks prior to October 7th, Fire announced that Harvard achieved its lowest free speech ranking ever for the 2023 academic year, ranking last out of 254 universities with a rating of 0.0. That's like Delta House ranking. In
bad score.
House.
It's a bad
loser. Score. The only university with an abysmal speech climate. All right, so don't kill me. But I actually would like to just show a little bit of that. Okay, so Harvard University, so Michigan Technological University is the top-ranked school for free speech. But Harvard obtained the lowest score and is the only school with an abysmal speech climate rating. The University of Pennsylvania, no surprise there. The University of South Carolina, Georgetown University, and Fordham University, right here in New York City, also ranked in the bottom 5. The key factors differentiating high-performing schools from poorly performing ones are scores on the components of tolerance difference and disruptive conduct. Students from schools in the bottom 5 were more biased towards allowing controversial liberal speakers on campus over conservative ones, and were more accepting of students using disruptive and violent forms of protest to stop a campus speech. Deplatforming attempts that occurred at schools ranked in the bottom 5 had an alarming 81% success rate. So I think that is important to note. And that does come up in the article that I'm working on, that not only this is where he has a point, I just think he's making the point very dishonestly and to his own ends and purposes. Yeah, sure. Places like Harvard do not support free speech. They are too free to support shutting down speakers. And sure, they have opened the door to a guy like this to call them hypocrites for all of a sudden being champions of speech. But this is where the entire identity politics are collapsing under the weight of its own contradictions, because they don't know what the fuck to do here. They don't know what to do here. You got the Jews claiming a minority, protected minority status. You've got these brown people being killed by the thousands daily. They have no idea how to respond to this. That's really what's going on here. The ideas that they have promoted, and particularly what's very interesting there, is violence. These universities have encouraged these students to protest violently by never reprimanding them for it. When they locked Riley Gaines in a room for 3 hours, screaming threats on camera with their faces. We know who threatened her. Not even a suspension came out of that, right? Brett Weinstein was attacked at Evergreen, people threatening him with baseball bats. Where were the consequences? No consequences. So don't be surprised now when these students protest and you've got students on the other side, as happened at Cooper Union here in New York, locked in a library with people banging on the doors. Well, you've been encouraging that behavior for years. And then all of a sudden now you're surprised that this is happening around this issue. So just to be clear, while obviously we're very much on the Palestinian side, we're not in favor of violence and violent protest, but I personally feel they made the monster. They built that monster. You shouldn't be surprised. I mean, this is what you taught them to do. What did you think they would do when a genocide in broad daylight broke out. When they're threatening some little blonde because she has the temerity to think that cocks don't belong in a women's locker room, what did you think they were going to do about something like this?
Right.
So to continue, Harvard's Office of Equity, Diversity, Inclusion, and Belonging is an important contributing factor to the problem. According to Harvard's DEI statement, we actively seek and welcome people of color, women, persons with disabilities, people who identify as LGBTQIA, ZLM, and those who, I'm just adding those, that's not there, and those who are at the intersections of these identities from across the spectrum of disciplines and methods to join us. In other words, that was a quote. In other words, Jews and others who are not on the above list are not welcome to join. When anti-Semitism is widely prevalent on campus, he's going to contradict this later, by the way, and the DEI office, which quote, views diversity, equity, inclusion, and belonging as the pathway to achieving inclusive excellence and fostering a campus culture where everyone can thrive, unquote, does not welcome Jewish students, we have a serious problem. Okay, so...
Well, first of all, it didn't say that they weren't welcome. It said from across the spectrum of disciplines and methods. I mean, that could include anybody, right?
It can. It can. Is he identifying a tendency within these kinds of clubs and within these kinds of movements to want to be exclusionary to the extent of arguing that, you know, they need their own spaces away from whiteness and white people? Because in a part I was trying, for brevity, I cut another part where he lumps in white people too. He says, well, what about white people? Okay, so you do, I mean, legitimately, you do have a lot of people who think in this direction, want basically segregation.
Right, but that's what I mean. But that's what I say. This is working the refs. It's working the refs. And this is what RFK, and just to be clear, RFK did not write this letter. He's endorsing this letter by Bill Ackman. Right. You know, RFK will defend Israel. And then when, you know, for example, Jimmy in his interview, when he said, well, it isn't Israel an apartheid state? And RFK says, well, you know, if you want to call Israel an apartheid state, that's okay, but you have to call other states in the region for what they are, right? That's just working the refs. He's not actually defending what he believes. He's just saying, well, if you're going to criticize me for what I think, then you have to criticize everybody for what they think. That's a similar sort of logic that Ackman is trying to employ here, which is, well, you guys are censorious and exclusionary with most speech on campus, so now we are going to, as an antidote to that, not be uncensorious. No, we're going to demand that you censor the way we want to, because you're already censoring, right? So this is hardly a free speech letter, quite the opposite. So for RFK to endorse this letter is just it is a complete reversal from all of his rhetoric about taking on censorship in all its forms.
Well, it is very much like Maher's monologue, where it's taking some gripes about campus culture that I would dare say most people have similar gripes, and trying to tie it in a very dishonest way to the cause that he's trying to push. This also, of course, raises the whole question of Jews being the daywalkers of minority groups, right? Are they white? Are they a minority group? Are they a minority group requiring protection? Or are they privileged white people that don't qualify for that kind of status? And I mean, that is there in here. I mean, I've never seen one of these groups that felt they needed to mention Jews as one of the oppressed groups that they're in. Right. And, you know, there was an article in The Root a while ago. This question blew up around Sanders the last time he ran. Is he a white person or is he a minority person? Right. And there was an article in The Root kind of addressing this, basically trying to argue what they're arguing with Asians now. Yes, it's a minority group, but it's a privileged minority group, so it's not the same thing. And in the end, yeah, if you ask the people who run this office what they think Jews are, that's probably where they would land.
All right, next slide.
Yep. Okay, so this one's really interesting, and this kind of says it all. How would you respond to a Harvard white supremacist protest where students shouted "Tulsa, Tulsa, Tulsa" from the Atlantic to the Pacific, America should be free of black people. Would Harvard even permit the above demonstrations to take place on campus? This is how warped Bill Ackman, and by extension RFK Jr.'s perspective is. They don't even understand how just absolutely insane that comparison is, and how most people would see the Palestinians as the black people in this scenario.
Right. The metaphor is completely flipped on its head in their mind.
Is Palestine Tulsa? Like,
Right.
are you comparing Palestine to Tulsa? I mean, this is exactly, you're flipping the whole thing. I mean, it's Tulsa if the Palestinians are victims. If that's what you mean by that, then sure, Palestine is Tulsa. But they're
But in that case, the rallying cry would not be considered, genocidal in nature, right?
Right. It would be supportive of those people.
Right. Exactly. That's the anti-colonial position.
Right. And this is the part that, I mean, that shows you how these people are perceiving all this as anti-Semitism. Like, it is inconceivable to them to not see the Jews as the victims. They just can't even imagine that that's not where people are coming from. But I mean, step back for a second. Like, whose position in this situation is most like the black people that you're invoking in that example? The Jews or the Palestinians? What the fuck are you even talking about, you maniac?
Right.
Your remarks imply
Well, we should say in his example, see, this is what I mean. This is what I mean by saying that the Zionists use the non-Zionist Jews as human shields, right? They hide behind non-Zionist Jews like Russell and me, but to sort of force an incorrect metaphor here, right? It's not between the conflict here is not between Jews and Palestinians, it's between Israelis and Palestinians, Zionists and Palestinians. A very specific political ideology versus a population of colonized and brutalized, in this case, people. And don't lump us Jews into all of this, right? Not all of us.
Well, and this is what got me blocked by Richie Torres, because he threw up a picture that was going around of anti-Semitic, or actually not even anti-Semitic, but I mean, it's not appropriate to graffiti a house of worship, just to be clear. But I think somebody had graffitied from the river to the sea on a synagogue. And what I argued was, well, this is what happens when you constantly tell people that being Jewish and being a Zionist is the same thing. When they want to protest Zionism, they think protesting Judaism is the same because you told them it was.
So, well, that's what I mean about they use non-Zionist Jews as human shields. They hide behind us to make their arguments.
Right. Exactly. Your remarks. Okay, so here, the guy is so up his own ass. He does not realize that here he concedes that his entire letter is a steaming pile of bullshit. Your remarks imply that anti-Semitism has been a serious issue at Harvard that has gone unaddressed for years. I have been an active alum for 35 years. During this period, I have neither experienced nor have I become aware of any anti-Semitic incidents at Harvard until beginning 4 weeks ago. When I asked my daughter today about her experience with anti-Semitism at Harvard, she graduated in 2020. We won't bring up the alumni connection implications there. She described anti-Semitism when she was at Harvard as, quote, non-existent. While I'm sure it is possible, if not likely, that there have been some anti-Semitic incidents at Harvard over the last 35 years, the reality is that Harvard has been an extremely comfortable place to be Jewish and or Israeli up until the last four weeks. Okay, genius. So what's more likely? That Harvard became rabidly anti-Semitic in the last 4 weeks, or that the country you are supporting is committing a fucking genocide and the students are horrified by it and anti-Semitism doesn't enter into it?
Right. Exactly. I mean, that's about as checkmate a move as you can make right there, right? I mean, nothing could expose better that actually, no, they didn't just become anti-Semitic in the last 4 weeks. Is a response to a political event, to a cataclysmic global event.
Right. Maybe you're on the wrong side.
Right.
So now he gives a list of prescriptions to solve the anti-Semitism epidemic that he just confessed he never saw any evidence of until 4 weeks ago.
Until a war broke out between colonizers and the colonized.
Yes. Yeah. And his daughter, who recently graduated, said absolutely did not exist.
Right.
Okay. So, but this is a problem that clearly needs to be solved, and he lays out how they're going to solve it. So these are snippets of he has I think 7-point plan here. The protesters, the protesters who have been chanting intifada and other eliminationist statements should be subject to disciplinary action. So, I mean, that was kind of how we handled the Native Americans, right? When they chanted for liberation and to have their land back.
Right.
That's the kind of eliminationist rhetoric he doesn't want going on anymore. Indians who might have said from the Pacific to the Atlantic, right? Or Native Americans, rather. The university should review the students' Slack message boards to identify those students who have made anti-Semitic statements or shared anti-Semitic imagery. Now, understand, this is coming from somebody who considers the pro-Palestinian position anti-Semitic by definition. So he wants Harvard to go and start disciplining students who might have shared like a Palestinian flag, right? I mean, presumably, if you read the temper of this letter, that would qualify. Certainly to this guy it would. Certainly to Ackman it would. The university should publicly reach out to students. He wants a Gestapo here. The university should publicly reach out to students in an effort to obtain other examples of anti-Semitic acts that should also be carefully investigated and for which appropriate disciplinary steps should be taken. Because Harvard students are notoriously focused on their job and career prospects post-graduation, disciplinary actions by the administration for failure to meet the university's standards for appropriate conduct that become part of a student's permanent record should serve as an effective deterrent to overt anti-Semitic acts on campus. In other words, shut down their pro-Palestine speech by threatening their careers, which is exactly what they've been doing.
Of course.
You had the truck that was doxing the students who signed the letter. You've had these law firms withdraw offers. The university should form. Okay, this is really funny. Again, light of everything he's saying, the university should form a task force to review the appropriateness of the activities of the OEDIB, the Diversity Office, and whether its practices of excluding certain minority communities on campus, including Asian and Jewish students, is appropriate, which in fact may be contributing to discrimination against these groups on campus. But you just said you never saw any example of anti-Semitism in 35 years of involvement on the Harvard campus. And
Right.
your recently graduated daughter saw no example of that.
This all manifested in the last 4 weeks.
All in the last 4 weeks, all these actions have to be taken. Harvard's admissions practices should be reassessed to ascertain why the university is admitting racist students and should consider revisions to the application process to enable the university to better screen the character of candidates for admission. So basically, they want them to go through their social media profiles to eliminate anyone who's critical of Israel.
Yeah, and keep in mind, this is not, City College. This is not, whatever, University of Indiana. No disrespect to those fine institutions. But this is Harvard. Like, these are where the elites come from. So what he's saying is we have to go through and vet the biographies and the political opinions of people who seek to use our esteemed university as the vessel through which they enter into the new leadership class of tomorrow, right? So they are literally picking and choosing who will have power down the road. It's especially damning. I mean, look, this would be a sick letter if it were written for any school, but you're talking about elite institutions here. You're talking about future politicians, right? Future leaders, right? Future heads of finance. This is where the powerful people come from.
Well, and when you think through the implications of this, it would essentially eliminate all Muslims, all Arabs, certainly all Palestinians from admission to Harvard. Even Mehdi Hassan, fucking piece of human shit that he is, speaks out against what's happening in Palestine.
Right.
Even
so
who would get in?
Well, of course. I mean, look, you read a thing like this and you wonder, how is it that 66% of Americans support a ceasefire, but no one in government does? Well, this is how. Because where do the people in Congress come from? Places like Harvard, right? Not all of them, obviously, but disproportionately, right? There's one more slide here.
Harvard should form a task force to understand the constraints on free speech at Harvard that have led it to ranking last on FIRE's annual college survey. That is a hoot. So the issues that have led to Harvard's last place ranking can be addressed. Now, that is the one thing he said in this letter that I actually agree with, but it's insane in the context of what he's saying. We need to viciously suppress any opinion that may in any way be pro-Palestine and critical of the Israeli government. And we also have to look into why Harvard has such a poor free speech ranking.
Right.
That's just that's just insane. It doesn't even bear discussing. Title VI of the Civil Rights. Okay, and here comes the threat. Here comes the real threat. The money. The money. He starts fucking with the money. Title VI of the Civil Rights Act requires universities to provide all students, including students who are or are perceived to be Jewish, a school environment free from discrimination. The consequences for a university's failure to meet the requirements of Title VI include the cancellation of federal funding. When coupled with numerous Jewish and non-Jewish alumni that have publicly and privately shared these same concerns, important sources of Harvard's revenues are at risk. In other words, crack down on pro-Palestinian students and protests, both in admission and in current enrollment. Otherwise, we're turning off the money spigot.
Yep, indeed. And just to bring this all back to the beginning, bravo! Bill Ackman says RFK, Mr. Free Speech, Mr. Civil Liberties candidate. Bravo. Bravo. Indeed. Wow.
Marilyn's tits were the finest I've ever seen to this day. It ruined me for all future women. Listen, man, I take a lot of, we don't take a lot of victory laps, but I'm sorry, man. We were ahead of the curve on this. We called that fucking asshole out very early.
Yeah,
we took a lot of shit for it. We
didn't anticipate the independent run. We thought he was going to fall in line behind.
We did.
Biden.
We were wrong about that.
We were wrong about that. But in essence, I think we called it correctly.
Yes, we did.
SB, thanks for the $5. Appreciate that. Hey, what's up with Rumble? Is the Rumble rant feature not working this evening? You know, we got our friend Jake here, who's here fielding the Rumble rants. He's getting a little insulted that you're not putting him to work over there. What's going on over there? SB, $5. Thanks for the super chat, my friend. Palestine was in trouble before all this. That speech was long overdue. West Bank was being erased. It took genocide for the squad to do something. Well, yeah, I mean, look, that's another thing. I mean, Rashida Tlaib has spoken personally about this quite often because it affects her personally. But look, everybody slept on this, including a lot of the people who were, and look, I don't want to open up old wounds because, most of these guys, in fact, everyone that I know has come around to the correct position on RFK. But, the people who were supporting him and saying, well, yeah, he's wrong on Israel, but still, you know what I mean? That's why that was just not an acceptable position to take. And again, not to pick on people because most of them, in fact, all of them that I know kind of realize that now. Mm-hmm. But this is why. And in RFK's case, you see how it bleeds into other issues, how it bleeds into Iran, it bleeds into China. I mean, we're going to talk about this tomorrow on our Patreon show, but he just put out there's a video of him talking about, well, if we don't have Israel there, that means China and Russia are going to control 90% of the world's oil. Right. I mean, that's just naked neocon.
It does this whole very like Kissinger kind of speech about the real politic of Israel.
Right, exactly. And how we need it as our proxy state, which is perfectly in line with what Joe Biden said. There's that tape of him that's going around. It was more viral at the start of this, in the days, immediately following the start of this new war here. But he said, if there were no Israel, we would have to create one, right? Which basically we did. I mean, Harry Truman, essentially. I mean, it was Britain, but Harry Truman, I mean, we did create one after World War II. That's what it is. It is a creation.
All right. One of my favorite Harry Truman moments is praising his good friend, Chame.
Oh. Chame, yeah. Sage and Fool. If you're doing Scotland, you must watch Elevator 11. Elevator 11. All right. Interesting.
I've seen Train Spotting. Does that count?
Yes, we have seen Train Spotting, indeed. Thank you for that. John Locke, thanks for the $20. Appreciate that. If RFK had Biden's level of dementia, his scandal would be getting arrested for soliciting the NYC subway police robot. Yeah. That'd be funny. That's a good one, John Locke. Appreciate it. John Locke, were you around for the last show? Bill Maher gave you a shout out on the last show. He said, we don't teach John Locke anymore because he's so dead and so white. I wish you were in the audience that night. You had your 15 minutes of fame there. Got a shout out on Bill Maher.
He really had his smug meter on 11 for that monologue. That was really Bill Maher at his most insufferable.
Oh yeah. That was the worst. And there have been a lot of bad ones, but none like that. That. We should actually, maybe on Friday, we'll do his recent thing with Neil deGrasse Tyson. Did you see some highlights of that?
I did. I decided not to go for it because it would confuse the narrative, because I do think Neil deGrasse Tyson trying to argue the women's sports thing is fucking absurd.
Well, no, but that wasn't the piece that I saw.
That's the clip I saw.
Yeah, that one's going around, but there's the other one going around where Bill Maher's talking about why he doesn't play college campuses anymore because they're uptight and anti-free speech, and he starts screaming at Neil deGrasse Tyson, "You should be telling them to be more enlightened." I'm like, listen, I mean...
I saw that part too, because that's all one long clip.
Yeah, but I mean, he just comes off as... I mean, he really is coming off as an aggrieved, angry old man.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
You know what I mean? Even if, I understand what you're saying about, the atmosphere on college campuses, but come on, man. You've had yours, all right? You've got yours. What are you so angry about this now? The point that you're berating your guest who came there to talk to you. Just wow. But anyway, maybe we'll talk about that on Friday. Who knows?
He is definitely not doing anything to disabuse people of the notion that he's just an angry old boomer.
Yeah, that's what he's really turned into. Yeah, angry for what? You've had as blessed a life as you can possibly hope for. Anyway, let's move on, folks. All right, this one is a little bit of an oldie, and by oldie we mean this broke 3 days ago. Every day is a year now.
I mean, just before we close that out, I'm going to point out, there are a lot of people who do not fit the mold, the politically correct mold, who seem to be doing perfectly well with that demographic. I mean, probably my favorite person doing sketch online is Ryan Long, man, and he's not towing that line. He's doing very well.
The problem with Bill Maher is he really just genuinely is not funny anymore. You know what I mean? He's just like that. There was I mean, we're kind of stepping on it if we do it on Friday, but Neil deGrasse Tyson, he says, you made great jokes back then, and Bill Maher got offended, and Tyson says, I'm not saying you don't make great jokes now, but that's really it. Your jokes aren't very good anymore.
Well, and also, look, man, the times change. You got to find other ways to reach people.
Of course.
Man, I mean, Ryan does stand-up, but he's got a huge presence online that feeds his stand-up audience.
Yeah.
Right, he's not just doing the stand-up. I mean, Maher, he's just, he's old, man. He doesn't.
And that's the boomer thing. He clearly has a disdain for the internet and people who got big on the internet. He brings on hardly any podcasters or internet personalities on his show. If you look at his HBO show, it's all people from NBC and CBS. He's very old school that way. It's almost like he doesn't respect people who do what we do here. He doesn't bring YouTubers on or podcasters on. Never.
You're right.
Almost never.
You're right. Really, with where he's coming from, if he were tuned in, he would have had Ryan on already.
Right, exactly.
That would be a perfect, somebody with a very similar view on some of his cultural critiques who's young enough to actually understand what's going on.
Right, exactly. All right, folks. Well, this broke a few days ago, and every day feels like a year now. But here is Norm Finkelstein on the Rick Sanchez show. I forgot what Rick Sanchez got fired for on CNN. He said something stupid and got canceled for it. But now he's on RT. And he brokered a debate between friend of the show, Norman Finkelstein, and former Newsmax host Steve Malzberg, who decided to take a very, very bizarre line of argument against the guy whose name, once again, is Norman Finkelstein. But here is Malzberg making the point at first. No one wants the Palestinians. No neighboring country wants the Palestinians.
Why does not one country in the entire Arab world not want to help their brothers and take them in, spread them out? You don't want them in Egypt. You don't want them in Jordan. You don't want them in Syria. You don't want them in Saudi Arabia. There's a million countries. Spread them out.
Well, first of all, there are Palestinian refugees in Egypt and in Jordan, so that's not really accurate. Number one. Number two. All right, look. Malzberg is a right-wing guy. I understand, people have different politics from me. We run a pretty heterodox show, have a fairly heterodox audience. So, I don't begrudge people for their opposite opinions. However, I can't imagine, guys like this, making arguments like this, it really does beg the question, have you ever seen a movie with, a white racist villain in it? And do you have the self-awareness to know when you're coming off exactly that way? Why don't any other countries want these people? You don't see yourself in that moment? Even if you're politically not where I am, all right, I can understand that. I can't imagine how you can go on TV and just impersonate this archetypical villain character for everybody to see. It's amazing.
Everybody knows they don't clean up after themselves. Right. When they move into the neighborhood, it goes to shit. The lawn, they don't even mow the lawn.
Right. Do you understand that, Mr. Potter is the villain in It's a Wonderful Life? When you watch that movie, were you rooting against him or for him? Because it kind of seems like you don't really understand the dynamics of, hero versus villain. Here we go.
Wants to help them. Why?
This is a difficult. I'll tell you what. Let's pause for a moment. Thank you.
I'll answer in one simple sentence.
Make your point. But we're going to.
Did any of the European countries or the United States want Jews before the Nazi Holocaust? Maybe.
Check and mate.
The Jews were like the Palestinians. They were so horrible. They were so vicious. They were so bestial, or as the current Israeli government calls them, human animals. Maybe that's why none of the European countries and the United States didn't want them. Do you think that's the reason?
Go home and get your fucking shine box.
That's what he should have said.
Norm folded them like an end table, as we used to say in the old neighborhood.
Should have ended with that. Now go home and get your fucking shine box. And closed his laptop screen.
You see, last night I almost went to Norm's event, and my biggest regret is that I didn't get the opportunity to put a lot of references like that in his ear.
Right.
All right, Norm, you got to freshen it up a little bit. So let me give you a few phrases to use.
Yeah, right, for next time.
Go get your fucking shine box. That'll go viral, I promise you. If you say that to somebody in one of these debates, that will go viral.
Yeah, I mean, he did pretty well on this one because the best is yet to come.
He killed him.
Yeah, indeed.
It's not easy. This is not easy, but we're going to have to...
Curious.
Gentlemen...
You think that's the reason you're smiling, but your stupid smirk won't change the fact that the very argument you used was used by Hitler.
Sir?
Yeah, the same argument you used was used by Hitler.
Because I'm a Jew.
What an idiot. What an idiot. You don't like Jews. You're speaking to a guy whose parents are Holocaust survivors. Yeah. But even if you didn't know that, his name is Norman Finkelstein. You know his name. Even if you didn't know his name, I feel like I have license to say this as a tribesman myself, and Malzberg is a tribesman himself, and so is Russell. Even if you didn't know Norm's name, Norman does not give off major goy vibes, right? I mean, he's pretty obviously a Jewish guy. So what the fuck are you saying? So like you're gonna actually play that card? You don't like me because I'm a Jew? What a moron! I mean, I think at this point he realized he had already been checkmated from the line before.
Yeah, the Norm doesn't scream presents under the tree.
Yeah, no, right, exactly. Yeah, exactly.
Jew eat? Jew? No, not did you eat, but Jew eat?
Jew eat? Yeah. Could you imagine saying that to a guy? I mean, saying that to the son of a Holocaust survivor.
He
saying
got
it to a guy named
embarrassed.
Norman Finkelstein. Yeah, you don't like me because I'm a Jew.
He's embarrassed. He's shut down. He knows he's checkmated. He knows he fucked up. And honestly, I've been hearing this shit from Zionists since I was a child. Why don't the other countries take them? I heard it from people I know in this particular case. And, I mean, my answer has been what most of our answers have been. One, why should these people have to leave their homes? And
Right.
two, these countries have their own problems. They cannot afford to take in millions of traumatized refugees.
But they do take in some refugees.
They do
So his
take in
point is
some,
wrong.
but they can't. Well, and also, I mean, the definition. I think we have that in another clip that we're playing. The definition of genocide is partly, forced removal, right? So
Displacement,
when you suggest that, that's what you're suggesting. You're suggesting a crime. You're suggesting a crime should be committed against these people.
Yep.
Gentlemen.
Your argument was used by Hitler to justify the extermination of the Jews. Nobody.
What's my argument? What's my argument?
Nobody wants them because they're so.
He just told you what
and
your argument
so
was.
horrible. You're a Nazi speaking now in those kinds of arguments.
This has become very contentious. We're going to take a break. I want to thank you both.
Not on my part.
Doctor.
Not on my part.
Dr.
What did I do?
Finkelstein.
I just laughed into the screen like a maniac. No one wants them.
Yeah, Norm side pocketed this motherfucker.
Yeah, not even close. Not even close. I mean, wow.
And and he armed us all with a comeback to that argument.
Yeah,
that's much easier and more direct than the explaining all of the nuances of it. That's a very direct argument that there's no comeback for.
Yeah, and Norm, as a Jewish man, making this point to another Jewish man, I know people want to walk on eggshells around this point, but no, this is Hitlerism. This is Nazism. This is absolutely very, very similar. It's very similar where these people are coming from. And we shouldn't be shy about saying that because that hits them where it hurts. And you know what? Like, I'm sorry, but what do you call 1,000 dead children a week?
Right. I have a friend from high school who he saw some of my Facebook stuff who actually sent me a video saying that he was going to offer to buy all the bombed buildings in Gaza for a glass of water. And then he said, oops, I changed my mind and poured the water. And I saw that, like, what is that, an own? Like, you're a fucking Nazi, man. Like, you're a Nazi. That's some Nazi shit. Oh, I will give you a glass of water for your ruin the buildings. Oh,
Right.
Oops, I changed my mind. Like, what do you think?
No, it's Nazi.
Like, how do you think
Absolutely
that
Nazi
reads to
ideology, yeah.
people? Like what? Like, ooh, wow, burn. No, you're a fucking Nazi, man. You're a Nazi. It's Nietzsche, man. Be careful in fighting monsters lest you become one. You're a monster now. You're the thing you claim to hate the most. That's what I yelled at the people at the Maddow thing. I yelled at them when they were taking me out. You've become what you say you hate.
Oy. Sorry. That was
What
you.
the fuck is that?
No, I had the Rumble chat open on my phone, and it actually
is what happens when you die. You hear your own voice coming back at you.
Coming in. Sorry about that, folks. All righty. Let's move on. We got a couple more segments here to do. We'll go to a super chat from Hobbs. Russell now has perfectly horizontal shelves. Now that's what I call progress, indeed. Thank you for the $18. Appreciate that.
Hey man, I got too much shit here now that's irreplaceable. Not because it's so expensive, just that I'll never be in the places where I got these things again, most likely. Like look, I'll show you this, man. It's one of my favorite things I got on the road this year. This is a Gandhi that I got out in Jaisalmer in India that's carved from camel bone. I mean, I can't replace that. It's not that, I mean, it's not that this cost $1,000, but am I ever going to be in the desert in India again where I could get something like that? So I had to fix the shelves.
Right. Yeah. Gotta make sure that those are safe. And that Russell's safe under there because you spend a lot of time under those shelves now.
Fuck it. He wanted to get rid of me, man. He was taking bets on those fucking shelves.
When it was going to implode on him. Virtuoso, thanks for the $4.99. I want to thank you, too, for not live streaming the latest god-awful repugnant debate. Yeah, that's tonight. I wonder how that's going. I wonder if it's over. Did it start at 8 or 9 o'clock? I'll have to watch some highlights from it. Because I know people were saying, hey, they might go after each other tonight because they're kind of desperate to change the momentum now. But, yeah, we will see if anything newsworthy emerges from that tomorrow. All righty, folks. So one of those sort of lost headlines of the past, week and a half was that Antony Blinken went to Israel to try and convince Benjamin Netanyahu to do a humanitarian pause, right, or a temporary truce. And essentially he was told...
Can I just say something before you move along? Because some people are commenting on it. They assured me that those bones were from camels that had died from natural causes, given that it was India and the place was full of cows and dogs that they refused to kill. I believe them.
Oh, so you're saying the camel was not harmed to make the statue?
No, it's not. I though, if there are any people on Earth I believe about that, it's the people of India.
All right, well, that's good to know. So, folks, let's go to this headline here from CNN. The White House warns Israel over post-war plans for Gaza. So one of the sort of lost headlines of the past week or so was that Antony Blinken went to Israel to try and convince the Netanyahu government to agree to a, quote, humanitarian pause or a temporary truce to move people through and to move aid in. And they were basically told to go fuck themselves, that no such truce would happen and that they would continue the bombardment as planned. And now hapless Joe Biden is acting as if he's powerless to stop this, while at the same time giving them $14 billion in aid. However, now we are starting to see what, once again, we called Ukraine without knowing much about it. We knew more about this going in, and it seems like we called this one too, because what are the post-war plans for Gaza? Well, we're going to find out here. The White House maintained Tuesday that it doesn't believe Israeli forces should reoccupy Gaza following Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu's comments that the country will have the overall security responsibility in Gaza for an indefinite period after the war ends. The president still believes that a reoccupation of Gaza by Israeli forces is not good. It's not good for Israel, not good for the Israeli people, said National Security Council spokesman John Kirby on CNN this morning. It's also not good for the Palestinian people, but I guess who cares?
Yeah,
right.
Well,
Notice that they never center them in any conversation. Well, this doesn't help America. This doesn't help Israel, right?
Well, it shows you they know they're dealing with fucking psychopathic maniacs. Like, well, if we want to get them to do what we want, we better not bring up the benefit of the Palestinians, because that always sets them off.
Right. That's a non-starter. Exactly. One of the conversations that Secretary Blinken has been having in the region is, what does post-conflict Gaza look like? What does governance look like in Gaza? Because whatever it is can't be what it was on October 6th. It can't be Hamas, he added. The latest warning from the White House comes after Netanyahu told ABC News on Monday that Gaza should be governed by those who don't want to continue the way of Hamas, before adding, I think Israel will, for an indefinite period, will have the overall security responsibility, because we've seen what happens when we don't have it. Well, there you have it. It was one of the first hints Netanyahu has given about his vision for a post-war Gaza. No, the hint was what happened. The hint was the response. Like, that was the hint.
Yeah.
What, the hint wasn't bombing 1,000 children a week? That's not a fucking hint that you want to clear the place out?
And I don't even think this is plan A. This is plan B, because Egypt is not giving signals that they're open to his plan of moving them all out into the desert.
Right.
So this is plan B. We
Well,
just
right, we wanted
we
to
just
talk about that last
reoccupy it, and we'll call it temporary, but we're never leaving.
Right. And what is anybody going to do about it? Right. What has Biden done to stop us so far?
Right.
So it was one of the first hints Netanyahu has given about his vision for a post-war Gaza, and suggests a divergent view than that of the U.S., including President Joe Biden's own statements about what the future of the Strip would look like. In an interview with CBS's 60 Minutes last month, last month meaning October, obviously, early November, so since October 7th, obviously, Biden said it would be a big mistake for Israel to occupy Gaza. At the time, Michael Herzog, the Israeli ambassador to the United States, told CNN's Jake Tapper that Israel does not intend to occupy Gaza after the conflict ends. There have been other sharp gaps between the U.S. and Israel emerging in recent weeks as the war continues. Blinken last week pushed the Israelis for a humanitarian pause to allow hostages and civilians to leave Gaza and for aid for Palestinians to enter, but it was rebuked by Netanyahu. This is my favorite. Here, this is the last piece that we'll read. And despite Blinken's forceful public missive that, quote, civilians should not suffer the consequences for Hamas's inhumanity and its brutality, Israeli forces continued to strike civilian sites in the wake of the top U.S. diplomat's visit. The forces claim that the sites were being used by Hamas. Biden told reporters in Washington that he hasn't had a chance to speak with Netanyahu on Tuesday, but he did ask the Israeli prime minister to consider a humanitarian pause when the two leaders spoke on Monday. I didn't get a chance to talk to him today. I did ask him for a pause in the past. Yesterday, I'm still waiting to hear from other people, Biden told reporters. Well, no rush. I mean, take your time. It's not like a civilian is being killed every 4.5 minutes, which is what's happening. Right? It's not like 400 people are being massacred every day. So, I tried yesterday. Netanyahu said he would circle back later this week, after another 1,500 people are blown to pieces. I mean, the total lack of influence that Biden is willing to exert, because we are able to exert as much influence as we want. The lack of influence that he's willing to exert here is just absolutely shameful. And that's why at the top of the show, this won't be in this clip, but if you're watching the clip version of this, find our clip on Anna Kasparian. She said, it is just absolutely shameful what we are allowing them to get away with. I mean, think of that. The Secretary of State goes there, travels. That's a big gesture, to travel across the world to Israel to try and convince them to do not even a ceasefire, a pause. And they get told to go get their fucking shine box. Let them fucking talk to the United States that way? The United States doesn't have to take that shit. We take that shit because we're choosing to take that shit. And all of this diplomacy is clearly just theater. Because if any of it had any teeth, we'd be seeing a decline in the violence right now. Instead, we are only seeing it escalate further and further and further. We are now past 10,000 dead civilians in Gaza, 4,000 of which are children. More than a third, almost half of the deaths in Gaza have been kids. And this is what they have to say for themselves. We went there and we said we want a humanitarian pause. They said they weren't interested. I talked to Netanyahu. I didn't have a chance to talk to him yesterday. Maybe he'll get back to me tomorrow. We'll try and work something out. Nothing is happening. Nothing is happening as he makes clear what his plans are, which is to obviously exile the people of Gaza and claim the land. Here's a tweet. Forgive me, I don't know what the full account name is. It's too small for me to read that handle. But here's video of Gazans leaving through the southern border. This is the new Nakba. Thousands of Palestinians leaving Gaza. This is what Israel really wants. It was never about self-defense. Yes, it was always about ethnic cleansing and the expulsion of Palestinians from their homes in Gaza so Israel can take over. Sorry, font was small there. But yeah, that's exactly right. It was never about self-defense. This was always the plan. It was very obvious this was always the plan. They said in their exact words, I forget who said it. They said, this will be a new Nakba. The Nakba of 1948 will look small compared to this new Nakba. They actually invoked the Nakba. So this is not reading between the lines. They said this is what they were going to do.
I was talking the other day to my old friend Golda Meir, the Prime Minister of Israel, and we made good progress with her. This it really just reveals how the United States and RFK, because he's a nutball, he gave away the whole game there. I mean, what he said in his speech, which we'll cover, I guess, on Friday, or what, tomorrow on the Patreon stream?
Yeah.
So RFK basically just laid it all out. Like, our interests, or as we see it, are so aligned with Israel's continued existence in that region and power, ability to project military power in that region, that Netanyahu's right. Like, what are we going to do about it? Whenever you're dealing in a negotiation from a position where there's nothing that the other party can do that will make you walk away from the table, and they know that, well, you have no leverage at all. If they know there is nothing that will make you go, okay, well, we're cutting you off. Why is he going to listen to you? He comes out of a tradition of right-wing fascist Israelis, of organizations that are essentially Nazi Jewish organizations within Israel. And this is exactly what they wanted. This was a gift. Just like Cheney came all over himself on September 11th. This was their wet dream. Oh, my God. Well, now we can do anything. We can justify anything. We'll say it's self-defense, right? And we'll make a lot of unsubstantiated claims, not saying that atrocities were not committed, but there are a lot of things that are being said that are classic things that you say to subdue the savage Indian, quote unquote. Right. A lot of claims of sexual assault that, again, not saying these things haven't happened. I still have yet to see evidence of the things that I keep being told. And I've asked Zionists on the other side, can you please show me evidence? I'm curious. I really want to know. Nothing. Just claims from Israelis, but no claims from victims even. I haven't even seen that. I haven't even seen these supposed victims' claims. Where are they? And of course, the beheaded, I'll be careful how I say it. But that's what they want. They just want this justification, and they're in a perfect position to just pursue this as far as they want, because they have a partner in the United States who is, just going to say pretty please. And then when they say no, they're just going to go, oh gosh, okay. And that's it. And all they really care about, Biden and company, they don't give a shit. They just see how these protests are erupting, and they feel like they got to pretend they're doing something.
Yeah, right.
Well, we asked.
Yeah, we asked. Right. We asked. He'll call us
Said
back.
no. We give them billions of dollars a year. We have no control over what they do, though.
Yeah.
No
Shucks. Rush, no urgency,
child being killed every 4 minutes.
Yeah. Whatever. We'll see.
We'll work it out. We'll try to work it out.
Exactly. Circle back.
It's going to end eventually.
We'll circle back. Yeah.
My people will call your people.
Yeah, we'll have my people call your people. That's an old saying from the Talmud. My people will call your people.
That's where it first appears. Although there are some fragments from Mesopotamia that suggest it might actually predate the Dead Sea Scrolls.
Yeah. 1,050 people here in the YouTube chat. Got a big crowd here. Please hit that like button. Hit that subscribe button if you're not subscribed on YouTube. 408 strong in the Rumble chat. Please hit the follow button over on Rumble so you stay in touch with us. Mark Slater, thanks for the $10. Your chat with Jimmy was sublime. Well, thank you. Appreciate that very much. Thank you, Mark. Cry Funny Elevator 11 on YouTube. Okay. Yep, that seems recommended. All right, Cry Funny, Elevator 11. Beautiful. All right, thank you, Sage and Fool. Appreciate that. Hobbs, 45. Thank you for the $10. Isn't it possible that the death in Gaza is due to climate change? Yeah, they should come out with that one. Yeah,
that's a good one, Hobbs.
Yes, indeed. Here, should we hit this for Charlie one more time since he missed it?
Sure, why not?
Why not? Hey, how are we doing on 666 likes? We should be almost there. We got over 1,000 in the chat. Jake, you said yes, so we're that was for the 666 likes. Beautiful, perfect. I guess we hit it.
I got to talk to my man Vim. One of our fans invited me to his suite for that concert.
Yeah, that's amazing. Yeah, that was Dan who invited you there. That's cool. All right. Yes.
Chairman, is that Dan? He's the
Chairman Meow. This channel deserves
on
1 million
Twitter?
subscribers. Yes, you're right. Thank you. Thank you.
From
very
your
much.
mouth
Very
to
nice.
God's ears.
Yes. So
You know, we get this a lot in the comments. So since that came up, let me explain. Okay, so these people you see in this particular space, like not unboxing videos or fucking slapping people in a McDonald's videos. like if you're in this space, when you see people with 1 million subscribers, they've been doing this for like 10 years.
Yeah.
Like it takes time. It's I think it was Aristotle who said it's a long way to the top if you want to rock and roll. So it takes a while. It was either Aristotle or Bon Scott. It takes a while. Like we have done very well. I think we're up year over year like 600 or 700% on views, and you really can't ask for better than that. Also remember, I mean, the YouTube algorithm, I do believe, my esteemed colleague has always, I think, been skeptical of some of these analysis. It does seem like the algorithm pushes certain things, and these are not the things it pushes. It doesn't like to push.
No, we're gonna have to get into some
Independent
fights at
media.
McDonald's.
That's it. That's
post a couple of those,
it encourages the worst shit. Like I was watching a video the other day that was from a channel that I like, that was discussing that whole world of like online feuds and the kind of behavior that it encourages and the kinds of things the algo likes. And, there's this whole YouTube world we don't know anything about because it's just like not even related to what we do. Like I never heard of Mr. Beast until there was that whole, thing with his partner going trans. I never heard of that guy. He's one of the biggest things on YouTube. I think he might have the most subscribers or like insane millions. I never heard of that shit.
Yeah, no, I hadn't either. Oh, look at this. Jake says we got a Rumble rant. Hey, it's about time. Round of applause for our Rumble ranter tonight. Beautiful. All right. Thank you.
Theo's taking all the money.
Thank you. Dave Morrison, show care. Talk about this dandy of Israeli propaganda. And there's a link there. Yeah, I think you emailed that to us earlier. I hadn't had a chance to message you back, but that is the video we will be showing tomorrow. So the State of Israel put out this ridiculous, what was, supposedly satire of the student activists. And we are going to show that on tomorrow's Patreon show. So sign up if you haven't. We had 2 signups during the course of this show. So thank you very much for signing up. We appreciate that. And tomorrow should be a real fun one. By the way, I did look into that Patreon email mishap. Thankfully, this is not great on my part, but it was my mistake. Apparently it was in the draft folder. It never sent properly, but that was my error, which I'd rather have it be my error than have it be something wrong with Patreon because we need it to work tomorrow. So that was my mistake. I apologize, but if you criticize me too much for it, I will accuse you of anti-Semitism. So don't get on me too much. All right? It's an honest mistake. And as a member of a protected group, I find it very offensive that you would suggest that I did it on purpose because that plays into a Jewish stereotype that we're shifty, and we're not shifty, and it's very offensive. And if you accuse me of that, then I'm going to have to have you canceled. But that is what happened. So I apologize.
We're going to deplatform
to our patrons. Yeah, exactly. I apologize to our patrons, but no harm, no foul ultimately because there was no call-ins for this evening anyway. But all right, we got one more segment to do, and this involves Max Blumenthal. So, folks, one of the most telling interactions over the past month has been Max Blumenthal's run-in with Matthew Miller, spokesperson for the State Department, when Max confronted him about Israeli war crimes, and Matthew Miller said, "We are going to handle any disputes and strategy between us and the Israelis in private," right? And that really forecasted everything that we've seen since. But Max got into the press room again, and here's another State Department stooge that Max grills brilliantly once more.
Secretary Blinken. And in March 2021, Secretary Blinken accused China of the crime of genocide for its alleged treatment of the Uyghur minority, but he didn't accuse them of killing on any mass scale or forcible transfer. Now we see with Israel's military assault on Gaza, something like every 200 people in the Gaza Strip has been eliminated. Over 4,000 children killed. The Ministry of Intelligence, as Sam pointed out, in Israel has published a blueprint for the forced transfer of the entire Palestinian population to Egypt. We have the intent to commit genocide expressed at the highest level of the Israeli government, including Netanyahu himself referring to the Palestinian population as Amalek, the biblical Amalek. So I wonder, when you're accusing one...
So the Amalek are biblical enemies of the Jews. So in invoking that, and Netanyahu did get a lot of coverage for this, in invoking that, he was explicitly framing this as a civilizational battle, which of course means us against them, which of course in his mind, he's giving himself a license to kill. And no one is intervening to do anything to stop him from carrying out that vision. So that's why he brought up that word.
Well, and can you imagine? We covered this the other day, where Chuck Schumer, with great disdain, talks about how they belong on the land because it's in the Torah, and with great disdain says, but they don't believe in the Torah.
Right.
Can you imagine if a member of any other religion was in our government and said something to that effect? But they don't believe in the Quran. But this land belongs to us. But they don't believe in Jesus, right? I mean, they'd be pilloried by the same liberal media that will kiss Chuck Schumer's ass all day and all night.
Exactly.
Country of genocide without accusing them of mass killing, and then blocking ceasefires to enable another country's military assault. What metric are you using to determine genocide, or is this just political rhetoric?
It's certainly not political rhetoric. The department, and I talked a little bit about this yesterday, we have a rigorous process in place for...
You could tell the A-team quit at the State Department because this is the guy that they end up sending out. This is a big story, by the way, which we were going to do. We're going to do this on the Patreon tomorrow because we already teased it out in a previous segment where we pretty much forecasted this was going to happen. But there is a dissent memo now that has been published at the Department of State expressing contempt for the administration's whole handling of this. And a lot of people have been shuffled around and stepped down, and that's how you get the fucking backbencher like this guy comes out and stammers his way through this.
Evaluating whether something constitutes as genocide or not, and that is true in any country that that situation might be being looked at. That is not a term that we have assessed pertains to this current conflict. We are, of course, monitoring the evolving situation and are examining facts as they develop. This continues to be an incredibly challenging and fraught situation, but it's also important to remember that Hamas bears responsibility for sparking this war. They have brought this tragic war to Gaza.
Okay, well, President Biden has accused the Russian government of genocide.
I graduated in the bottom 10% of my class at Toro College. I can't believe I got to this podium.
Exactly.
Important to remember that Hamas bears responsibility for sparking this war. They have brought this tragic war to Gaza.
Okay, well, President Biden has accused the Russian government of genocide for its actions in Ukraine, where in 2 years it has killed as many civilians as Israel has killed in 1 month in the Gaza Strip. So how do you account for that disparity where you're assisting one country and accusing the other of genocide when the country you're assisting has systematically killed so many more people in 1 month?
Now, I just had to pause it here, just because, to be fair, I thought the civilian death toll in Ukraine was far higher than that. Then again, they are throwing anyone and everyone on the front lines in Ukraine. So that may be where he's coming up with that number. But I just wanted to pause it there because obviously the death toll in Ukraine is far, far higher than 10,000. But now, the average age of a new recruit is somewhere in the 40s, right? So like everybody's being pushed
is he
to the
talking
front
about
lines there.
civilians? I thought he was talking about
No,
civilians.
he's talking about civilians, but that's what I mean. When they are throwing people into a meat grinder in Ukraine, they're making them combatants. So maybe that's where he's getting that number from. You know what I mean?
Okay.
The low civilian count. So I just wanted to pause there just to give a little bit of an asterisk there because I'll have to look into that more.
Those circumstances are totally and completely not the same, and to make a comparison like that, candidly, is incredibly inappropriate. We have been...
Ukraine is a puppet state of the West, and Gaza is, a concentration camp full of disposable people who are of no use to the West. So that comparison doesn't hold.
And they are victims of a client state that we see as central to our geopolitical ambitions.
Yeah, exactly.
Please don't interrupt me. We have been, have raised directly with the Israeli government about the need to distinguish between Hamas terrorists and Palestinian civilians. This is something that the secretary has raised directly on his travels. We even laid out.
And what were the results of his travels? What came of those travels? Benjamin Netanyahu saying, no, we will continue our bombardment as planned. So again, like, what results do you have to show for any of this rhetoric that you're trying to spin here?
The president said, pretty please.
Yeah, exactly.
Netanyahu refused. Our efforts are ongoing.
We're asking nicely. We're respecting the norms and the guardrails, doing this the right way.
The president has challenged Prime Minister Netanyahu to a game of rock, paper, scissors over Zoom.
Yeah.
By which the matter will be decided.
That we believe that there are commitments that can be made additionally on dealing with protecting civilian life more effectively. And we're watching very closely to make sure that happens.
But you've referred to Palestinian civilians as human shields. Doesn't that blur the distinction between civilians and militants?
We have not referred to Palestinian civilians as human shields. We have said
what?
I sat here and heard Matthew Miller refer to them as human shields.
We have said that Hamas is using Palestinian civilians as human shields. That is not hyperbole. That is something that we have seen Hamas do as they continue to
and that gives cover for Israel to kill them.
Civilian infrastructure across
That's
Gaza.
what he's saying.
Well, and even that's not clear because if you watched Norm's debate with the guy from the Free Press that was hosted by that comic, that came up. And Norm quoted reputable authorities saying there is no evidence that Hamas actually uses civilians as human shields.
Integrate themselves into key civilian infrastructure across Gaza.
Wouldn't that be blurring the distinction between civilians and combatants? If you say Hamas is using civilians as human shields, wouldn't that be in some ways justifying the killing of civilians because they happen to be in the way,
are not
in
justifying.
their homes?
There is no one in this administration that is justifying killing of civilians. Any civilian life loss is incredibly troubling, heartbreaking to us. Any number above 0 is deeply troubling to us. What we are doing is we are working with our Israeli partners to ensure that steps can be taken to minimize the impact on civilian life. And we also have believed that there is a moral imperative, there is a strategic imperative to take steps to minimize loss of civilian life. I'm going to work through them. I've answered like 4 of your questions. You could...
Wow.
I mean, look, in terms of slinging bullshit with poise, he's good at his job.
Yeah, maybe he'll move up. Maybe he'll move up in the ranks there.
Yeah. No, I thought he handled it pretty well by the standards of the State Department.
But Max's question about the human shields, about like let's assume that is true, and let's just work through this. Well, Israel has ground forces. They have intelligence, right? They have pretty sophisticated surveillance capabilities, which they use against the people of Gaza on a daily basis, right? Even before October 7th.
Yeah.
So if you have these surveillance capabilities, you have this ground troop force, why can't you go in and root out the terrorists? Like the human shield argument just gives you license to level, say, a refugee camp from the sky, right? And then they say, well, they use the citizens as human shields, so there's nothing we could do, right? Like, you have the intelligence, you have the backing of the United States, by far the most sophisticated intelligence systems in the world. You have all of that at your disposal. You have an endless supply of cash and resources from us. You can't use those resources to more precisely target the actual enemy combatants that you're targeting. But of course they don't want to. It all goes back to the previous segment and the tweet that we showed in the previous segment, which is that the goal was always to clear the place out.
Right.
What is the thing you say on the show all the time? There are no contradictions. Only what? There are no contradictions.
There are no contradictions. When you think you found a contradiction, check your premises.
Check your premises. Right, exactly. So if you are operating from the premise that this is an anti-terrorism operation, what they're doing doesn't really make sense as an anti-terrorism operation. Leveling a refugee camp, killing 500 civilians in the hopes that you're going to get the one Hamas commander that you said was there, that doesn't make sense. If your premise is, let's clear the place out and claim it for ourselves, we'll kill whoever doesn't cooperate, and the people who do cooperate will get lost, well, then all of a sudden it makes a whole lot more sense, doesn't it?
Keaton, you're talking about the world's most moral army.
Right.
Yeah. Well, you know, Rolling Stone and its ongoing effort to murder the memory of what it once was just wrote another hit piece on Roger Waters, because in his sit down with Glenn Greenwald, he suggested, as many others have, and we have on this show, you know, it's kind of suspicious that Israel has all this intelligence and surveillance, and this happened, and it took 2 hours for them to respond. In this,
and that since it happened, the intelligence seems to be flawless, according to them.
Yeah.
They produced recordings.
It came back online. There was just this weird gap where they seem not to, and you know, in a place where, from what I understand, soldiers are on every corner, that there was no military response for the amount of time it took to do this.
Right.
It seems a little funny. That damn anti-Semite Roger Waters, who lost his father to the Nazis.
Right. Yeah. Yeah, that's right. Roger Waters lost his father to the Nazis when he was very young.
Yep.
All right. Nocturnal Human. See, the Rumble chat. You guys are brutal. That guy is Sagar if he stopped going to a gym. Yeah. You guys don't play.
Doesn't Sagar say sometimes he was a fat kid? That's why he's like a gym rat now.
Is he a gym guy now?
Oh, yeah. He always. Yeah. Like, yeah, he's not trying to get, like, you know, pumped, but he's a
habitual gym guy.
He talks
All
about
right.
it, yeah.
Nothing wrong with that. It's good for you. Ernest Dowson, thanks for the $10 over on Rumble. Palestinians are not the biblical enemies of the Jews. The Jews and Palestinians lived for centuries as relatively good neighbors, yes, prior to the inception of Zionism. Yes. You know, I wasn't saying they are. I was saying that's how Netanyahu framed it. That's why he called them, that's why he used the Amalek word.
Listen, I've never gotten into this on the show because it would take a bit of time to get through this monologue, but one day I will get into my analysis of the book of Joshua, where this is where the Jews seize that land. And there's, you know, they throw in a lot about God and everything to justify their actions, but basically it's a description of a genocide. And it's very interesting, like very often in the Bible, because there is history in the Bible mixed up with a lot of like theocratic interpretation of history. Yeah. And in the book of Joshua, they were accidentally too honest about what happened. The ways that they framed it are very revealing. So I will talk about that maybe tomorrow for the patrons.
There you go.
That's a good spot for that.
Yeah. Dwayne Vogel, thanks for the $5. Israel putting the Nazi in Ashkenazi since 1948.
All right. If I'm with the right kind of crowd when I go through the Diamond District in New York, I say, Rabinowitz and Sons, we put the Jew in jewelry.
In jewelry. Yeah, right, exactly. Yeah.
Because that's an all Hasidic business here in New York.
Rich, thanks for the $5 for Norm's newest punchline. I'm sure he has no idea what you are talking about. He said he only watches black and white movies. What movie did I try to recommend to him? Oh, the Nat Turner biopic. I tried to recommend that one to him.
I tried to recommend The Warriors. He was completely disinterested.
Yeah, not a successful pitch there. Putz the Mouse, thanks for the $1.99. You guys are awesome. Thanks for being you. Well, thanks for being you, Putz the Mouse, and thanks for being here, and thanks for the donation. Appreciate that. Dwayne, thanks for the $5. Netanyahu, Nazi Yahoo. Yeah, there you go. Dwayne's got the wordplay working tonight. Thank you, Dwayne.
That's good. We might refer to him the way I only refer to the raisin-faced Medusa as Debbie Wasserman Schmuck.
Right.
Maybe we'll only refer to him as Nazi Yahoo.
Nazi Yahoo, yeah, exactly. Dwayne, you're a patron, as I understand, so maybe you'll be tuning in. I think you just signed up a little while ago, a few days ago, so maybe you'll tune in tomorrow for your first patron show. Aspen Fall, and thank you for the $2. Be nice. Fat Sauger is doing his best. Okay, there you go. Another Fat Sauger opinion over there. Thank you. And Janice Anderson, thanks for the $4.99. CS violated the Second Amendment. Chuck Schumer violated the Second Amendment with his Torah statement. He took an oath to uphold the Constitution when he took office. Should be removed immediately. You know, I would like to get some footage from, I know our friend Jose Vega was at the march last night where they marched to outside Schumer's house and started protesting peacefully there in the dead of night. I would love to see some more footage from that. But thank you for the donation. Underhill, when will it be happy fun time again? Oh, I don't know, man. I don't know. It's not looking good. It's not looking good.
It's not looking good. I mean, I've got like 6 Kathleen Kennedy stories that I just can't do.
I think we are going to do
too frivolous.
I think we're going to do a David Pakman segment on Friday. That might be fun.
Oh yeah, there you go. There you go. And I want to do the sheep story.
Yeah, there's a cute animal story that we have for Friday.
Yeah.
Here's some good news. The orcas are back in action, so that's kind of a fun one. We'll do that one on Friday. What else do we have?
Oh yeah, right.
Yeah.
Right.
So
we got some fun stuff
we got a couple of fun ones coming up on Friday.
Yeah, they rescued a sheep in Scotland. It's adorable.
Beautiful. Yeah. Beautiful.
Poor sheepy.
Yeah.
I'm telling you, that story broke my heart. I mean, it ends well, but I feel so bad for the sheep.
Right.
Like,
it's a happy ending, of course.
Yeah, it's got a happy ending.
All righty. Beautiful. Well, folks, it was a pleasure being here with you all tonight. Once again, go to patreon.com/do-dissidents and sign up and become a member. We had a couple of you guys sign up over the course of this program. Edna J and Jess H, you guys signed up, so thank you very much. That was very kind of you. Patreon show tomorrow at 8 o'clock, exclusively on Rumble. So what happens is we will send out the email. I will make sure to send it. It won't get stuck in the drafts folder like it did today. Once again, apologies about that. But you guys will get an email tomorrow morning from either Patreon or Substack, wherever you're signed up, with a link to the Rumble stream, and then we will be on at 8 p.m. So if you are not signed up, if you don't follow us over on Rumble, please go to rumble.com/do-dissidents and make sure you follow us over there. And if you're on Locals, do-dissidents.locals.com. It'll be a Locals post that I will send out tomorrow morning as well. So I believe that's everything we got this evening. Is it not? Paul Chu, member for 4 months, says free Assange. Absolutely.
Damn
free
right.
Assange as well. Free Assange, free Palestine, and free beer. Those are the 3 things I live by now. That's everything we got, is it not?
Yeah, that was ours, wasn't it? That was our.
Fuck them boats. Well, fuck them boats was a phrase that's been going around. That's kind of went viral with the thing. I used it in one of the graphics for the clips.
That's why I thought.
But that is borrowed. Yeah.
We are doing a follow up because they're just getting better and better at taking out these boats, man. They're getting their technique down.
They do it the right way. Only property damage. No people were harmed. So, it's a fun story in that way. Everybody ended up okay. But yeah, man, they took out one of these yachts. They keep fucking with them. They keep fucking around. They keep finding out.
Yeah.
What are you gonna do?
They can't. They're not going after fishing boats, man. They have class consciousness.
They have class consciousness. Exactly.
Yeah.
So we'll do an orca segment on Friday. That'll be fun. Once again, folks, patreon.com/DoDissidents to see us tomorrow. A club gig, as we say, over on Rumble. Those are a lot of fun. They're uncensored. They're rowdy. They're interactive. Patrons, everybody who is welcome to watch that show also has call-in access. So last time it was fun. We had a bunch of callers call in and have a good time. So those are a lot of fun. And we hope you can join us for them and support the show. You get the added bonus of keeping this project going. And we try to make it worth your while as best we can with those patron streams. So we'll see our patrons for the patron stream tomorrow. We'll see the rest of you guys bright and early Friday morning, 9 a.m. Eastern. Thank you all very much for being here. Thank you to producer Jake in the booth. And until we see you again, be it tomorrow or Friday, be safe and be well.
Whoops. It happens sometimes, you know? Courage.
Beautiful. Thanks, folks.
Please clap.